Hello everybody, welcome into our latest live video. It's Friday, the 25th of October, 2024. My name is CareyHolzman, and thank you guys so much for hanging out with us today as we got a new build video for you. Now, we've already prepped this motherboard here that we're using today in an earlier video. The board was purchased, one of each manufacturer was purchased, Asus, ASRock, MSI, and Gigabyte, using our contributors' support. And that enabled us to go out and buy the boards to have a fair comparison to try and figure out what was going on between the 13th and 14th gen Intel chips and why I was having such a hard time getting them to run cool. We now know the answers to this, and it's what we suspected all along, and BIOS updates are critical to ensuring the reliability and the performance and longevity of any 13th or 14th gen Intel chip, desktop chip that you have. AMD has also had issues. We've talked a little bit about those. We don't work a lot with AMD here, but needless to say, it's been pretty rough for AMD and Intel these last couple of years. Intel just released their new Ultra line of processors. There's a lot of people in the gaming community that aren't happy. There's nothing new. People in the gaming community never seem happy. But in the business world where I'm from, where you work for companies, and it doesn't have to be a big corporation, it could be a small local real estate office or dentist office or lawyer's office or any sort of small business that just contributes to the community. It's not a selfish act of gaming where you're sitting in your little room by yourself and just, squandering your precious time here on Earth. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's wrong. I have better things to do with my time. Everybody needs a little entertainment, and if that's how you get yours, that's all well and good. But that's not the business that makes the world go around. That's not the business that gets my bills paid at the end of the month, and that's not the business that affects customer service when my clients, who all have customers, can't service those customers. There's a lot more at risk, and it's a lot more of a video game because the consequences are real. So I prefer that. And when we talk about these new Intel chips, when it comes to actually getting any work done, it certainly appears like they are superior in many ways, not in all ways, but it's a completely new design. It's a first generation chip, and we expect there's always going to be problems with first generation chips. If you don't want to have those problems, avoid any first generation of anything, any brand new first generation car, any first generation motherboard. If you want to be first, then you will deal with the consequences that nobody else has dealt with before. You'll pay more money for it, and you will solve the problems or be a part of the solution by reporting those problems so that by the time the rest of us go to buy them, those kinks have all been worked out and we have a smooth experience. So as long as you go in with the right expectations, I think that's important. So if you go and get a first generation chip, and you think it's going to run for the next 8 years, you may not be so right. Now, that's not we had the problem on the 13th and 14th generation chips, which are obviously not first generation chips, but the 14th generation also wasn't the 14th generation. It was just the 13th generation cranked up a little bit. That is not a winning strategy or a sustainable strategy to just keep trying to eke out more power out of the same thing and give it a different name. Is one of the dumbest things I've ever seen Intel do. Then when there's a consequence that affects one, it obviously affects the other because they're both the same technology, 13th and 14th gen. On the other hand, if you expected Windows 11 compatibility out of your AMD chip you bought, your Zen or Zen Plus, because you wanted to be first, you're not going to have any AMD compatibility with most of those chips, if any of them, I think. $4,000 for a Threadripper 1950X, not Windows 11 compatible. I don't care if you just built it 6 years ago, 5 years ago. It's not going to work. It's never going to work. So you're going to have to replace that chip if you want Windows 11 compatibility. If you would have waited for Zen 2, you'd have been fine. You wouldn't have to replace the chip. So these are things that you should absolutely accept as your responsibility as a consequence of the decision you voluntarily made because you wanted to be first. And if you're okay with it, I'm okay with it too. What I don't want to hear is people claiming that they're victims because you should have known better. And the opposite is true too. If you wait and hold on to something that's too old because you insist that you're justified in some way, you're in your own way. So everything that happens as a consequence from your failure rate, efficiency, frustrations and potential lack of security as a result of refusing to let go is only punishing you. And again, I'm okay with it as long as you accept your fate. If that's the decision, you want to take every bit of money you've got in the bank and you want to go to Las Vegas and place it on the roulette table in one spin, I won't tell you not to, but I will tell you, if you lose everything. If you still want to do it and you lose everything, don't say you're a victim. You made that choice voluntarily. So if you're good with it, I'm good with it. That's all I'm trying to do here is emphasize reality and consequences. So we got to think about tomorrow, not just about today. And in my line of work, I've been being as a computer technician for over 30 years. The one remaining piece of my business that hasn't changed since day one is making sure my customers have proper expectations before I begin any work. So I will have lengthy conversations that most other places that sell things, they just want to sell you something. Once the money is out of your pocket and into their pocket, they want nothing more to do with you. It's your problem now. I don't run my business that way because I cannot afford to. So I have a conversation with my clients over what they want to spend, what they're expecting to get in return. And if that's reasonable and we can get there, or with some minor adjustments, we can negotiate that, we're good. But if the customer is non-flexible and unreasonable, I don't want that customer. I'd say, I appreciate the opportunity. I wish you the best. This isn't what I do. You know, I don't make miracles happen. I don't make computer parts appear out of thin air at half price. So if that's what you're looking for, rather than mislead a customer and take their money and get the sale, I would rather walk away than have an upset or unhappy customer. I wish more businesses were that way, honestly, but I do believe that's the number one reason why I'm still in business today. Not every customer is valuable. Some customers will potentially put you right out of business. And I'm not willing to risk that for the customers who tend to be the least paying, demand the most, and will complain the most endlessly after the sale, which continues to stop any revenue generation. It prevents me from generating revenue with somebody else, since I can only talk to one person at a time. And of course, it's not good business. So just because you're a customer, right? The customer says, well, I wouldn't do business with you anyway. Well, good, because I wouldn't do business with you either. You know, there's this idea sometimes that the customer thinks they hold all the cards, and for the right amount of money, they might. But if they're looking for a deal and they're asking me to do them a favor, and if I can do it, and it seems like it's going to make sense, I'm happy to do it. I love my job. But sometimes people will reach out and they'll say, you know, I want everything and I want to pay nothing. And by the way, you're going to tutor me from from the point I give you my money, you are going to be considered owing me. And every time I call you for anything, I expect you're going to answer my call. Well, that's not how it works. If it's a warranty issue, we can talk. If you need private tutoring, we can work out something, I'm sure, financially, or I can recommend school. But there's warranty and then there's tutoring. And sometimes people don't seem to understand the difference. And if I get a hint early on that this might be a problem, I will play it safe and walk away from it, because in this line of work with building or repairing computers, there's not a lot of profit in it with all the competition. So I'd rather walk away clean and say, you know, maybe not the right job for me, you should find somebody else, if I feel like there's a way it can go sideways. But on the opposite of that, sometimes you talk to somebody and you really make a connection and you go, wow, you know, this person seems like a great person. They're very reasonable. Their expectations are right on par. This seems like an ideal customer and I want to work for them. And that's what we have for you today. As a gentleman reached out, his name is Richard. In fact, he just became a member here in the channel. Welcome Richard into our membership. And Richard reached out and he is having, he bought an Asus pre-built machine, like a 12th gen, and it's locking up randomly. And he does pretty good with computers. He's changed the RAM and changed the solid state drives and improved it, increased it. And yet his lockups continue to happen. Now, he's not exactly local, but he's in the state. He's in the state. So it was a couple hours each way. And he asked if I could build him something because he's at his wit's end. He's had this machine about 2 years, I guess. And you know, whether it's ASUS or HP or whoever, all of these pre-builts are built to a price. They're not built to a quality. So I'm sure the motherboard it's got in there isn't great. The power supply that it came with isn't going to be great. The case isn't going to be great. It's not like it's going to be easy to work on. This is all par for the course. If you're going to buy a pre-built, it's not really ideal for somebody that is going to be hands-on and wanting to upgrade things. If you want to be hands-on and upgrade things, you shouldn't buy a pre-built. That's not who it's for. They're not easily upgradable. In many cases, they have proprietary power supplies that you can't simply swap out, which limit your ability of what power consumption you can add to the machine. Each machine's a little different, each pre-built, so they don't have the same limitations, but they are all limited in some way, and that's how they bring the price down. And people need to prioritize. You're either going to pay the low price or you want the customization of a modular system. Modular always costs more because the parts cost more, but that also gives you more versatility and more options in upgrading, repairing, and ease of which that's possible. And sometimes what I see happen, most of the time when people buy a pre-built, they never open it. Most pre-builts sold. They get purchased, taken out of the box, used until they're not usable anymore, and then they're replaced. Very few people ever upgrade them. And those who do often regret buying a pre-built once they realize the limitations of the upgrade. And once you're out of warranty and you find out how much it can cost to fix one of these proprietary systems, it usually doesn't make financial sense to fix it. If you've got $1,200 into a computer, that might be worth $100 to fix. If you've got $600 into a computer, it may not be worth $100 to fix, especially if it's 3 or 4 years old. But this is often a realization that occurs after warranty expires. Or the realization never happens, right? The vast majority of people go buy these pre-builts, they take them out of the box, they use them, they're done, they get rid of them. So I was talking with Richard and just hit it off right away. Seems like a very reasonable, very nice guy, and I very much want to build this for him. But Richard's a bit old school, and Richard wants a couple of optical drives. And it's a little tough to find any cases these days that have optical bays. And I asked Richard, was there a case you had in mind? And he mentioned the Fractal Design Focus G, which is what we have. Now, most of you, if you're regulars here, you know I'm not a fan of Fractal Design. It's not about the company itself, or let me rephrase, it's not about the case quality, but over the case design. I'm not a fan of their designs. I know Anthony Remus at Remus Computer Solutions uses a lot of Fractal design cases. He likes them. So just because I don't like something, you know, it isn't the end all be all. We all have our preferences. So Richard asked me, would this case be okay to use? Now this case came out in 2017. And understandably, if you're looking for a case that has optical drive bays, you're going to need an older case. But when you get an older case, you're not going to have modern things like USB-C on the front of it. Also, the older case is going to sell for less because people don't want the old stuff. They want new stuff. So instead of spending $120 for a case, you spend $60 or $70. And either way, you're getting what you pay for, but as long as your expectations are, you know, if you don't care that you have a plastic panel instead of a glass panel, great. If you don't care you don't have USB-C, fine. If you don't care it's made of metal that's a little bit thin, if that doesn't matter to you, you're going to be very happy with your purchase. But if you were to purchase, say, an NZXT H7, you'd spend another $30, $40. You'd end up with a case that is much heavier, thicker metal, USB Type-C, but you would have no 5¼ bays. If you wanted to add optical drives, you would do so adding it through USB. There's no right or wrong here. These are all personal preferences, and there's two sides to every coin. If I flip a coin and I say heads and you say tails, there's no preference to which side of the coin is better, right? You obviously want the side you want. But you also have to understand that when you're making these choices, you're sacrificing other things that are less important. You're trading something that is important to you for something that isn't. Now, at this point, Richard's PC, he's asked if we'll fix it for him, the original one. Yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to diagnose and fix it. The problem he's describing intrigues me. However, I cannot do that from how far away he is. And it doesn't make sense for him to make a 4-hour round-trip drive or even to pay the shipping cost to ship it to me when it's worth nothing to him. So his thought was, I'll continue to use this current PC that's getting me frustrated until you have my PC ready. No problem. And then when he picks up his PC, he'll drop off the one that's bad, and we have more content. We can diagnose and repair it on a video. And when that's done, he can have the computer back and do whatever he wants with it. But as far as helping him remotely, I've never seen this computer before. He's already done a lot of the same work I would have done, and he's still getting the same problem. So something's not adding up. Now, he reached out to me the other day, and apparently he had enough of his old computer. He has reached a point of total frustration and said, I'm done with it. I was planning to use it until this PC is done, but I'm tearing it apart now. Okay. He has reached the end of the line with it. So I guess we're building this just in time. As I mentioned, we've already got the board prepped from an earlier video. This is the Pro 790p from MSI. He asked if this cooler is going to be good enough. This cooler's fine. It could get a little loud. So I recommended we upgrade him to the Laminar cooler. Now, Richard doesn't care about RGB. It's not, not important to him. But he's also not against it either, unless I misunderstood. These coolers are far superior. It's going to run quieter. It looks better. We're going to leave the original OLOy DDR5 RAM in here. Is it DDR5? I think it is. Richard has provided a brand new S880 Gen 4 NVMe, so we'll take the one we used out. We'll put this one in. We'll make sure we have the latest BIOS. We'll install Windows 11 Pro. We change the cooler. This goes into the brand new case that Richard provided to us. And Richard also provided us with the 650 watt non-modular EVGA power supply. This is a 3-year warranty, 650 watts for $55. That is a bargain. In fact, when I saw how cheap these were when Richard was asking me, what power supply do you recommend? Keep in mind, he's not going to put a discrete graphics card in here. I said, well, 500 watts ought to be enough. 650 for $55, that's the one I would buy. And this is a shallow power supply. It's very smaller than a normal power supply. It's not as deep. And I said, you know what? I'm going to order a couple of those for myself. Those would be great in our budget builds. This way, you can still get a good price without dealing with unknown quality from generic manufacturers. We had a quality manufacturer with a known history of quality. With a 3-year warranty, I know that warranty will be honored, and we likely won't need it. And I think that's today's build. It should be relatively straightforward if everything goes as planned. And I hope Richard is totally happy with this upgrade to what he's currently got. Plus, if Richard wants to bring his optical drives over, we can put them in for him. If he should be able to, when he gets this home, plug it right into his monitor, his keyboard and mouse. We'll already have Windows updated, activated. All the drivers will be installed. All the updates will be installed. And then, of course, if he has any issues from that point forward, he can reach out and we can connect to him remotely. The distance between us does make support a little difficult, but talking to him, he seems very capable of taking care of most issues on his own. So likely if he's stuck on something, it'll probably be something good, something that'll be a head scratcher. And hopefully, if I do this right, we won't encounter that. But if we do, well, of course, as any build I do for anyone, if they have any issues with it, they should reach out to me. And of course, I'm happy to do what I can to help. One of the reasons I'm not shipping out of state anymore is the cost of shipping and the damage that has been happening in shipping. Well, Richard is not local in the sense of Maricopa County. He is still in the state, so he's right on the edge. And like I said, after talking with him, I really wanted to do this. So that's the difference, right? Am I doing it for the money, or am I doing it because I want and I enjoy it, and I know this person is going to appreciate what I do, and they're a pleasure to talk to, a pleasure to know them. So, when that all lines up, in my line of work, you can't ask for a better situation. So very happy that he's given us the opportunity, and of course that he's permitting us to kind of share his story and fill in, show you how this whole process gets done. And hello to all my friends in green joining us in the chat room. We did find that there is a memory leak that's causing YouTube to crash during live chat. It is a chat room issue. The problem's been well documented for over a month, and YouTube seems oblivious to it. I've opened a case up with YouTube, providing about 4 or 5 different links that go back as far as more than a month ago, that show you how to demonstrate the problem. And if you close out the live chat, the memory leak goes away. It only occurs in live chat. So just so you know. As far as I know, there is no fix for it, and it affects all Chromium-based browsers. It was documented at what version this started at. I can't remember what it is, but it's nothing we can do. At this point, YouTube cannot claim they're ignorant of it. They've been made aware, and they've been made aware of all the people complaining for weeks and weeks and weeks, and they've been made aware of how to replicate and verify the problem. And they said, thank you, we'll take it from here. We'll see if we ever hear back, but that's all I can do. It is what we call a memory leak, and we haven't heard of memory leaks in quite some time. It's surprising to me that this has gone on as long as it has, but at least now we have an explanation, and it can be fully verified by anybody who chooses to, by paying attention to how much memory your browser is using when the chat room's open versus when the chat room is closed. So, this community is very heavily based on interacting with our chat room. To tell you if you're suffering these crashes to close the chat room, for me, kind of defeats the purpose of watching a live video, because if you can't interact with me, what's the point? On the other hand, if the crashing is causing you to not enjoy the content I'm creating, then maybe you should wait until the problem's resolved before joining us again. It's not as though I have to get up and do something and I'm procrastinating. It isn't. This isn't something for me to fix. It's out of my hands. You rely on YouTube, without which you can't see me. I rely on YouTube, without which I can't communicate with you during live videos. We have a very common denominator that neither one of us control, and that's YouTube. But at least we have an explanation, and you can Google more information on memory leak live chat YouTube, and lots and lots of, it's been going on over a month. How YouTube claims to be unaware of this is beyond me. You'd think by now somebody would have made them aware, but I can tell you I have. Okay, so if it's possible nobody complained to YouTube, then they can't say that anymore. All right. And let's see, Bajin Guy saying hello, and Mark Gaines says hello. Mike Quinton joining us. Essential working too hard. And there's Mara in the chat room joining us as always. David Graham, Trevor Dunn, Thomas McT, Richard Claiborne, and who else am I missing? Oh, Frankie B joining us. There's Dwayne Blackwelder and Luke Greenia, Bill Sony T, as well as Anthony Pete, Mark Gaines joining us from Northern Ireland. You know what was recently brought to my attention? That's where the DeLoreans were built, wasn't it? Didn't they build all the DeLoreans in Northern Ireland? It's just a little piece of nerd trivia. I've always liked the DeLorean. The styling of the outside. Not a fan of the interior or the engine or transmission, but they only built them in one place in the world. It was one factory, and I believe that was in Northern Ireland. Terry joining us says hello. And there's Doman 2000, Martin Postema. Nick Poverman saying happy Friday to everybody. Scott says hello. Michael Sayer says hello. Charles Eslick says hello. White Sox Tom and Eddie Casanova all say hello. There's John Lewis. I believe John joins us from Brazil. And Mark Gaines says, yes, DeLoreans were made in Belfast. There you go. Ah, to be alive in the 1980s in Belfast. Maybe not. If I'm remembering that right, that may not have been a good place to be. Still, just a little nerd trivia. Barry Klein says, next thing you know, Carey will jump on buying a DeLorean-style mini PC. Is one made? Is there one available? Patrick Nanny joins us, says hello. There's LRCX. There's Larry joining us in California. Good to see you, Larry. Mike Quinton says, have a Fractal Design XL full tower. Lots of room with battleship metal, less heavy, which makes it hard to tweak. I need a crane and a forklift to move it, but I have to wait till I get out of school. Yeah, you know, those Cougar cases, or that Thermaltake cases, like the Apache helicopter, whew, those are heavy. When I talk about the Fractal Design case, having a plastic panel and not glass, and the material being thin and the price being low, I'm not talking about every case Fractal Design makes. If I wasn't clear on that, I'm not a fan of Fractal Design cases. And what I specifically am not a fan of on this one are the things I've mentioned. So hopefully that wasn't misconstrued into this applies to all of them. It's no different than buying an automobile made by a certain manufacturer. Doesn't mean they're all made the same way as a specific model. So yeah, hopefully that wasn't misconstrued. Now, I'm going to go ahead and move the case out of our way for right now because I need some room to work here with this motherboard. And one of the first things we need to do is swap that NVMe drive. That's real simple, and we'll get started. It's Friday. It's still nearly 100 degrees in Arizona. So apparently on Tuesday, we're going to hit temps of around the high 70s. That means what's Tuesday? It's still October. It's only a couple of days going to be left in October. Tuesday's what, the 19th, 29th? So 2 days before the end of October, we will finally say goodbye to these hot temps, I think, for a few months. It has been crazy. This has been a very hot year. Let me just set this over here for right now. Anyway, as you can imagine, bring on Tuesday. Bring on the 70, you know, look, even if it's the high 70s, I'll take it. I'm tired of these 98, 99 degree days. I'm so done with it. And this is what we've got to deal with all through Monday. I understand I live in a desert, but you do understand we're well into fall, right? And some people don't get these kind of temperatures in the summer. And we've got them now heading into November. And my only hope is that maybe it won't get hot for a while. In other words, that it may start to get hot traditionally in late April or early May. But now, if the result is the winter's shifting a little bit, and now we're getting winter a little later, but it stays for the same amount of time, meaning it won't start to heat up like this again until middle of May, end of May, worth it. On the other hand, if we have a very short winter and our summer starts as it normally does in April, our reprieve is going to be very short-lived before we start going through this again. So anyway, what are you gonna do? If you think your weather's terrible, come on out to Phoenix and see how you like it. What can I say? I was born and raised in Detroit, so I don't have the lizard-like cold blood needed to live here pleasantly. All right, let's see. NVMe drive. Let me get my glasses. William Denton joins us and says hello. Paul Howe says good Friday. Welcome in, welcome in. Ron Barnett says your AC is not going to get a rest. Yeah, well, that's another issue, right? Because then that also means very expensive electric bills. But what are you going to do? What are you going to do? So thankfully, we got good AC here at Studio C. All right, so the first thing I want to do, never mind what we've already prepped on here. The whole point of purchasing this was to pursue a solution for the overheating issues we were having. And it turns out there was nothing that we could fix. It was strictly an Intel problem that the motherboard manufacturers caused. And we had to wait for Intel to fix it, just like the live chat problem. Certain things, there's nothing we can do. You can make your car run great, but you can't fix the roads. If your city has created a dangerous situation or a situation that makes it more challenging to drive on the road, you have to wait for the city to fix it, or don't use that road until they do. Those are your choices. It doesn't really matter how good your car is. So what do we have in here? A 980 Pro. This is a 1 terabyte 980 Pro without a heatsink. And we're going to put in a fanxiang S880. I highly recommend these drives. These are high-performing Gen 4 drives. We'll regularly see over 7,000 megabytes per second. And they're a bargain of a price, around $100 for a 2 terabyte drive, give or take. The same components as on the name brands in many cases. Many of the name brands use exactly the same controller and NAND memory chips, but you're not paying the name brand price. Still have a 5-year warranty, and we've never seen one of these fail yet. We've installed about 3 dozen of them or more. And once again, we continue to add to it as a highly recommended unknown brand. That is, just because it's an unknown brand doesn't mean it's junk. Nick Caffrey joins us with a €5 super chat. Says, oops, I'm very late, had to catch up. Great to be here. Well, thanks for joining us, Nick, and thank you for your super chat contribution, of course. All right, so let's get this out of the package. Here we go. So as I previously mentioned, the Threadripper 1950X that we built was our first ever community supported build. That is not ever going to be Windows 11 compatible. And that is still the streaming computer at Studio A. It still works, everything's fine with it. But I want everything at Studio A to be on Windows 11 24H2. So what I've had to do is go through the computers over there and start upgrading them. And a while back, we did the Nuka-Cola build, which is a limited edition Intel 8086K processor. It goes back a few years. Windows 11 24H2 fully compatible, no problems. That thing runs like it's fast. It's barely been used. I never finished it as far as like all the cable management, putting the panels on, but it's finished as far as it's fully operational. And it was buried all the way in the back, and it took me a while to dig it out. And then I fired it up, and yeah, Windows 11 24H2, no problem, it's happy. But then I take out the expensive Threadripper build, and Windows 11 says your CPU is not compatible. And I have to Google this and go, is that right? We just built this, what, 6 years, not even 6 years ago, five or 6 years ago. Even 7 years ago, maybe. But it still seems a bit early for there to be not support. Well, you're going to have to get a second gen. If you need to stay, if all you need to do is change the processor and you want to keep that expensive everything else, like the motherboard, well, looking on eBay, the best I could find, the most reasonable solution was a 2950X instead of a 1950X. Somebody had one used, of course, over $300. And so next week I will show you how we're going to replace that chip. We won't have to do any other work. We don't have to reinstall the operating system. It's a simple matter of taking the heatsink off, removing the original 1950X, even though there's nothing wrong with it. We still have another year of Windows 10, but I don't want to wait. I am very happy with 24H2. So I want to go ahead and get it done. So that Threadripper chip that I ordered from eBay, that just came in today. And that will give us content that we can pursue next week. But it should be pretty straightforward. Take the chip out, put the new chip in, thermal compound, heatsink, fire it back up. And of course, we have to make sure we have the latest BIOS before we do that. And it'll probably take a few minutes to boot up as it retrains the CPU and the RAM again. And we should be back up in business. I probably won't notice any performance difference, but I will be able to put Windows 11 24H2 on it. So frustrating, because it took us about 2 years to get that darn Threadripper build to work without crashing. And that was, you know, because we wanted to be early. So it cost a lot of money, dealt with a lot of frustrations, a lot of memory incompatibilities, tons and tons of BIOS updates to address the issues. Finally got it all smooth, and it's been the streamer ever since then. It's still got everybody's name on the front of it. I cherish that build. It means a lot to me. So I want to make sure that we keep it healthy as long as possible. Hey, there's Mike's Unboxing, Reviews, and How-To joining us. If you've not seen Mike's channel, check him out. He does a great job based there out of Great Britain in the UK, and makes great content. Got a lot of respect for that guy. All right, I guess I can do the heatsink. We got the NVMe drive replaced. Let's go ahead and... The stock heatsink isn't bad. It's not much to look at. When you really push the system hard, it can get a little loud. But that's only if you're pushing it hard. And as soon as you're not pushing it hard anymore, it quiets right up. Richard also mentioned he wanted a motherboard with built-in Wi-Fi. And this was the only board I currently had that has built-in Wi-Fi. And this is a Core i5-14500. It's not a K processor. And we will have to check, there's probably a new BIOS for this. So let's pop that old cooler off of there. This cooler upgrade, I would say, is not necessary, but I think it adds a lot to the way the system looks, even though Richard says it's not important to him. It's kind of important to me. And it also adds a lot more surface area. The Intel Laminar coolers are the most unjustly not talked about component that really frustrates me. The gaming community seems like they're very intolerant. They want absolutely everything. They want to pay nothing, and then no matter what it is, it's not good enough. So the benefit for you and me, for those in the gaming community, I'm not saying everyone, but there's a percentage of them that tend to be quite loud online, and it doesn't make me want to be a part of that community, by the way, because of that portion of the community that's, I don't know, it just feels unattractive to me. So this is the Intel Laminar cooler that comes with the non-K version of the 12900, 13900, 14900. And if you look at the price, a 14900 or a 13900 cost more than a 13900K. So 13900 is typically less expensive than the higher end 13900K. Why does a 13900 cost more? Because you're getting a $60 cooler with it. And then what do people do with these? They go, oh, it's a stock cooler. It's crap. I want a liquid cooler. So they spend even more money to buy something they don't need that will typically have a 5-year lifespan before it has to be replaced, instead of putting an air cooler on that will likely last the entire life of the PC without any trouble, that doesn't cost any additional money. That's the mentality that we're dealing with. But you can take advantage of that mentality. Because so many people are on board with this mindset, their thought is, I'll sell the original cooler on eBay just to try and get some of my money back that I spent. So you can pick these up on eBay for about $30 all day, 30, 40 bucks. Needless to say, we've ordered quite a few of them. What's really cool about it is when this spins, you notice the Intel logo there. See how it's upside down? If I hold this fan in position, I can rotate this logo, and magnets hold it in place. And when the fan spins, the logo does not spin. It's the coolest tech. Plus, it's got RGB on it, and the RGB has an ARGB header, so it can be controlled with your motherboard's RGB, or you can turn the RGB off altogether. So you don't have to have RGB if you don't want it. The cooler, instead of being plastic like this one, it's all metal. It's far better made. We have a copper core, whereas on this one, I don't know. We'll look at it. But this is the bargain of the century, where people are buying an amazing cooler that comes with their CPU, and their groupthink has them convinced this is junk and it's not good enough, when it's not sold with an overclockable processor. It's not a K processor. It doesn't need a liquid cooler. Now, I suspect most people are putting the liquid cooler on for the looks. They're spending money they don't have to spend for equipment they don't need because they want some lights. You can go to IKEA and you can buy lights really cheap. What do I know? I guess I'm too old and practical now to say, well, let's have some fun. Okay, well, you know what? That's also probably what a lot of people who've died from overdoses have said. Let me buy these drugs I don't need to take to spend money that's very, very expensive and end up overdosing and dying. Come on, have some fun. I don't know. I don't know the logic. But whatever that is, I'm past it. Of course, how people want to spend their money is their business. But if it can work out to that benefits you and I, like they're going to get rid of a never used cooler for dirt cheap, that's that good, sign me up. The 14500 does not need this cooler. You cannot get this with a 14500 from Intel. So because of the state of mind of many in the gaming community, for the rest of us who understand value, I just want you to know that's out there. There's plenty of them available on eBay for purchase. They're the best cooler you can buy for the money for an Intel non-K processor, in my opinion. And nobody's talking about it. Like it's like a secret. And you know, you might imply, well, if they're not talking about it, it's not worth talking about. I think it's just the opposite. So what else don't we know? What else are they not talking about? I was looking for my straight edge driver so I can turn these towers. And I thought I had it in the drawer here, but let's see. Oh, okay. It was all the way in the back. Again, this cooler does the job, but it can get a little loud from time to time. So we'll keep it, you know, we'll use it as a spare for something. It also has a copper core. And, wow, look at that, beautiful thermal paste distribution is great on there. And same with our chip. Now, when we reapply this cooler, we'll add our own thermal compound. When it's brand new, it comes with thermal compound pre-applied. But I prefer to do it myself because you can see the outer edges of the chip are not covered. One might argue that those don't have chips underneath them, but there's a reason why that surface area is that size. Now, granted, the manufacturer who makes the cooler and the manufacturer who makes this chip have decided that that's the area we need to cover. Me, as the technician, has to support it. I'm going to cover the entire area equally to ensure and guarantee that whether it needs it or not, it's going to get covered equally from top to bottom, left to right. I do it the same way regardless if it's Intel or AMD. Charlie Purdy with a $20 super chat. Right on. Thank you, Charlie. Bajin Guy said, I just added that Intel cooler to my watch list. Be aware there may be a couple different versions of this. There's one that's like half height. I believe this is called the RH1. But take a look at the pictures. It should have two cables coming out of it. One's going to be your fan power. The other's going to be your ARGB. You do not have to hook up the ARGB. That's what this button is for. You can control the RGB manually. If you don't want it on or you don't have an ARGB header on your board, you could just wire tie that and just set your color or turn it off entirely by pushing. The button, I think, turns it on and off. Not sure if it cycles the color. Anyway, that's what the button's for. And then if you plug in the ARGB, it overrides the button. But you can see the height difference on these coolers. And these fins are metal on the one here, and the fins are plastic on this one. So this one's lighter, cheaper. They're about the same weight, believe it or not. Also, well, this cooler just plugs straight down with those little towers. This cooler requires a backplate to be attached behind the CPU to give it the added security that it needs to stay fixed onto the back of the... Basically, you're going to use the same holes, but instead of this little alligator mouth that opens up that keeps it from backing out of the hole, like an anchor in a wall, this is more like a machine screw, and you need to put a different kind of an anchor in the wall that accepts a machine screw versus an anchor screw, right, where the screw doesn't get wider. It's the same length all the way from top to back, front to bottom, and it there's a tapping screw and there's machine screws. This is neither. This just goes in and spreads out like this, so you can't back it back out until you twist the little tower and lift up on it. Then that pulls the pin out of the mouth of the alligator, and the alligator can close its mouth, and then it can back out through the hole. The concern is the weight of this might break the little plastic traditional way these coolers go in. So it has this additional support bracket that it screws down into that's threaded, and it locks in so you don't have to worry about over tightening it. So the logic, it's all there. It all makes perfect sense. It's all included. You don't need anything else. It's nothing you need to improve upon. If you install it correctly, it'll work perfectly. All right. Just wanted to be clear. Dustin Fuller with a $2 super chat. He says, here's a little something for the channel. Thank you, Dustin. Okay, I need to wipe this thermal material off. I don't recommend you grab a Q-tip or a cotton ball when you're taking the bulk of it off. That's when you're polishing it. To take the bulk of it, use something that you have a lot of that's cheap, like paper towels, which we're still setting up Studio C, and I do not yet have paper towels nearby, so I have to walk in the other room, because prior to the show, it didn't occur to me I should probably have that ready. But thankfully, it's not a long walk, and we'll just grab just a regular old everyday paper towel. And we're going to get the bulk of that thermal compound off, because if we don't do that right now, if we try and take that CPU out, I promise you that thermal compound will get on my fingers, on my shirt, on my pants. It'll be on the table, and I won't be able to explain how it got there, and it's very difficult to remove it. So, got my paper towel. And then the other thing I like to do is I want to reset these little towers on the cooler that I had to turn to get this to remove. I need to turn them the other way so it'll be ready for me to install next time. If I leave them in the open position, when I push down on them, they won't lock in. So we're going to go ahead and just clean that off since I got it in my hand. And, you know, if you look at what a great job a paper towel, honestly, that's all you need to do to reuse this. You do not have to get isopropyl alcohol or, you know, spend money on all this thermal stuff. They're trying to gouge, or they're trying to find clever ways to separate you from your money. And they'll say, but it makes a difference. Okay. Whether or not that difference is actually beneficial to you, I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, you can tell me, but if we run a heat test on this, if I reapplied thermal compound without, if all I did, try and make this thought clear, if all I did is wipe this thermal compound off with a paper towel, and I mean, just try and make it look pretty, okay? As long as there's no remaining thermal compound, and I take some brand new thermal compound, put it down and reestablish this, I can almost guarantee we will not see any difference in performance. Now, if you're an extremist and you're pushing the limits of the voltage and the frequency of your CPU, and you need every micro temperature improvement you can get, I don't think you represent the vast majority of computer owners. When I buy hiking boots, I don't need them to go up Mount Everest. Some people do, okay? Most people don't. So if I'm watching a video from a hiker preparing to hike Mount Everest for the 3rd time, and he's going over, or she's going over, the gear they're bringing, and I'm a hiker and I think, I need that gear too? No, I don't. That is a lot of money for gear you don't need because you're not using it in that way. Now, if you want to, if it's an emotional purchase, have at it. But as a requirement, no, absolutely not a requirement. Unless you're doing those things, just as there are record-breaking overclockers that use liquid nitrogen and will burn their CPU up in about 6 minutes and blow through about $1,500. Not to mention what the nitrous oxide, liquid nitrogen, what that costs. That's a very expensive hobby for a computer that only lasts about 12 minutes. But some people do that, and those people need these really expensive thermal compounds. The other reason a thermal compound may be preferred is how long it stays viscous. Cheaper thermal compounds may dry out sooner. This isn't a problem you're going to see for, a couple of years. So if you're like, okay, I'm going to put this thermal compound down and I don't want to deal with it ever again, it may make sense to buy a more expensive thermal compound that has a longer elasticity. On the other hand, if you're somebody who's always tinkering with your machine and you're taking things apart all the time, you are wasting your money, in my opinion. You could get the exact same performance out of the cheapest thermal compound laying around. You'll see no difference in performance, and you won't have it together long enough for that to ever dry out. So it's not so much about the thermal performance of the thermal compound, but rather the longevity of how effective the thermal compound remains over time. It's not something you just immediately apply it and measure it and go, that one's better. Let's check it again in 2 years. This is what differentiates a good thermal compound from a bad one, in my opinion. So, once again, seems like a lot of people don't talk about this. And so the information is either misunderstood or the information is not conveyed because the person explaining it doesn't understand it. And, I'm left picking up the pieces when people reach out to me and they're very confused. And I'm like, this is all very simple. But anyway, it is what it is. And if I didn't need to do this, I guess we wouldn't be here today doing it. So that's the good side. I feel I have a purpose to try and clarify things and make it simple and practical for the average user. So we're going to go ahead and take this base off of here. Now, normally this base has some stickers under it to stick it to the back of the motherboard. You don't have to use them, but it holds the base in place. Because what happens when it's under the board, it just falls, right? So if we put this in here, and then I set it back down, it just falls. And there's no way for the screws to reach it. So that means you got to use a hand to hold it, and then use the other hand to put this on so you can get the screws started. So what Intel has done is Intel has added these little stickers right here. And because these coolers, again, the ones that I see on eBay were never used. They weren't tested and evaluated as crap. They were assumed they were crap. Or it was more visually appealing to not use it. But it has nothing to do with the performance of the cooler. The idea that they've added this sticky tape is something I wish every cooler manufacturer that requires a backplate, which you typically only find on liquid coolers, by the way. Many of them, you have to use basically 3 hands to get them started, to get the water block or the brackets onto the backplate. So with those little bits of sticky tape back there, we can simply apply this with pressure, like this. And the sticky tape goes onto the metal around the CPU support here, just like that. And now it won't fall out, so we can put this on and screw it down. Everything will be tight. Now, even though I don't think it makes much of a difference whatsoever to polish both the bottom of this, which obviously I had used personally. When it arrived, it came with thermal compound. We used it on something, we took it off. So I'm going to reapply thermal compound. And I think the surfaces are clean enough that it doesn't make much difference. But I also think it's important that if we're going to do something, let's do it the right way. We do it all the same, so we have consistency and we don't make exceptions. So then we shouldn't have exceptions when it comes to support questions down the road or support issues. So even though it may not make much of a difference, I'm going to do it anyway because that's how I've always done it. If I was in a situation where I did not have isopropyl alcohol, or I didn't have a 99% alcohol or a 90+% alcohol I could use to clean this, I wouldn't need to stop my build and go to the store and buy it. Just clean it with a paper towel. If it looks clean to the human eye, it's clean enough for your thermal compound. Unless you're some kind of extreme overclocker, in which case, why are you here, right? There's nothing I have to offer you that you don't already know. So with that in mind, I do have isopropyl alcohol and I will use it, but I wouldn't go out of my way to do this if I didn't have it. It's not that important. Now, if you have some residue that you can't get off of there, different story. But if it all wipes up and you don't see any remaining, I would advise you, if you're skeptical, test it yourself. Take measurements with your CPU now and wipe your thermal compound off with a paper towel from the heatsink and the chip. Then reapply thermal compound without cleaning it any further than that, and then run your testing again. And I'll just let the evidence speak for itself. Mike Quinton, what about the weight of the tower coolers over time? Will the motherboard sag? Well, the screws in the motherboard, if you look at a motherboard here, an ATX board will usually have 3 screws that support it across the top, the middle, and the bottom. So where can it sag? The space between the screw and the edge of the circuit board, there's no sagging that can happen. It's only about 2 millimeters. The space between this screw and this screw, keep it supported. There's no sag that, I'm not quite sure where it could sag, number one. Number two, sagging is mostly an aesthetic problem. Today's motherboards are different from the boards that were made in the 70s. Those tended to be brittle, not fragile, but brittle. These boards are typically, I could probably bend this board at least 40 degrees with absolutely no problems at all. They're meant to be flexible. So sagging is mostly an aesthetic issue, and it's normally affected by things hanging off of the motherboard, like a heavy graphics card. I'm not aware of ever seeing a motherboard sag in my lifetime. Well, that's not true. I'll take that back. I've had some boards sitting out that started to warp, which is different than a sag. And then once you screw them down, the screws straighten the board back out, and over time, that warp goes away. It has no impact on the performance or reliability of the board. In one of my videos, I was frustrated with a board and I tried to break it in half. No matter what I could do, I could not break it in half. I couldn't do it. So they are meant to bend. Now, if you've ever seen a motherboard with sag and you want to know how to fix it, we might be able to help you with that. But if all you're doing is imagining a motherboard sagging, I don't know how to help you. Show me one and we can talk about it. But then the question is, what difference does it make? Even if that were to happen, so what? I mean, if the motherboard is sagging, it's likely because it doesn't have all the support screws in it. So someone might say, well, they give you 3 mounting points, but you only need to use one of them. That would be a person that would have motherboard sag over time. And again, and I can't emphasize this enough, no effect on the motherboard. It's just they may not like the way it looks. So you're fine. You're all fine. Peter with a €1 super chat, joining us there from Amsterdam, the Netherlands. Thank you, Peter, as always. You'll see a little bit of stuff comes up on the Q-tip here, but not much. And then we'll do the same on the other side of the heatsink. All right. Oh, this one had quite a bit of residue still on it. Oh, you know what I think that was? I think that was dust. Sometimes when I store these, I should store them this way and not this way, because then the dust and the Phoenix air, you know, having it rest on the contact area, it's easy to clean. It's not like it's sticky. I was just a little confused, like, what is that? Okay, so once again, I don't want to stain anything with thermal material. So I want to get this stuff off my desk right now, both to free up space and to prevent actually getting any of this on my fingers, on my clothes. And, you know, once it's one place, it gets everywhere. And good luck washing it out. So let me throw this away right quick. We'll grab a nitrile glove and we can put thermal compound back on the chip. Once we do that, we can fire it up, check for a new BIOS update. We can install Windows 11, 24H2 of course. And after that, I guess you can just go in the case and it'll be ready for our friend Richard. So, should be a pretty easy, straightforward build today. I don't expect there to be any surprises. But then if I expected surprises, they wouldn't be surprises now, would they? Okay, are you ready for your exam? Come on in. All right, now, we are ready to apply our thermal compound. Again, it doesn't really matter what thermal compound you use. I have a lot of these spare thermal compound tubes from they were included with the Scythe coolers. If the thermal material coming out of the tube is dry, it's hard to get out, throw it away. If you've got some on your chip, clean it again, try a different tube. Don't insist on using it. It's already dry before you put it on. It's not going to last that long before it loses whatever it's got left in it for thermal material transfer, or effectively transferring the thermal material to both the heatsink and the internal heat spreader up the top of the CPU. Don't mix and match thermal compounds either. So like this tube just ran out and there's not quite enough in there. You have two choices. Either get another tube of the exact same thermal compound, or if you don't have another tube of the same, you've got a tube of something else, clean that off because you don't have enough, start again. Stick with one type of thermal compound. Now I have a bunch of these, and unfortunately I only brought one out. So let me step away one more time, as I still don't have Studio C organized yet, but I do know where these are. I have many of these little tubes. In fact, someone asked me if they could have a few of them, and I think I sent them home with about 40 of them. And I still think I have at least another 15 or 20 here. That's a lot of cooler installs. All right. So because it's the same exact thermal material, we can go ahead and add some more. There is a color difference. It looks like this has been oxidized. I see a darker gray and I see a lighter gray. I know they're the same material. They're made by the same company, and this one's the empty one. And this is fine. If you wanted to be ultra cautious, you could absolutely wipe it clean and start again. If anything, I probably put a little too much now on here. So I'm going to go ahead and just spread these out. And that gray material, the one I took off, it just kind of came off as a glob on my finger. So that's already dried out. Turns out it just came right off. Otherwise, I'd re-clean this whole thing again. But it seems to be a problem that solved itself. And that can happen if the tube has just been sitting around unused after a while. Just like a battery, if you've not used the battery's still going to die, whether you use it or you don't. And I've just touched edges of the board. See, this stuff gets everywhere. So that finger right there has the older stuff on it. You don't need a lot on here. I try to finger paint so I cannot see the surface of the CPU anymore. And then I tap it so that I get little valleys and hills. So when we reattach this, it squishes it down to remove any potential air bubbles. Not that it's an airtight system and air bubbles couldn't just as equally get in on their own. When this material heats up, it becomes almost liquidy, quite viscous. And I've just touched the board again. So I've got a couple spots here that are a result of me being a little too generous with the thermal compound. And I want to clean those spots off right now. So let me get rid of the glove. Like I said, the worst part of this is how the stuff gets everywhere and how difficult it can be to remove. It may leave a little, kind of a stain. But luckily we're just dealing with a little tiny bit here. So I'm going to grab another paper towel. And I can also use a Q-tip if I want to be a little more precise. But we'll start with the paper towel, see what it leaves us. And if necessary, if it does leave anything behind, we can dip that Q-tip back in the isopropyl alcohol again and clean it that way. It's a new build and I want to make sure it looks good. So as I'm wiping it, it's spreading. That's not good. I've got 3 areas and all this is doing is making it worse. So I have a solution for that. Some people are like, it's good enough. Not for me, it isn't. I'm going to take a few moments, take some pride in my work. I don't want anybody thinking I'm sloppy or lazy. And it comes up just fine with the isopropyl alcohol. What you want to be careful of is that you're just not making it worse. If you're just spreading it around, you need to get some kind of a cleaner. Best to just avoid getting it on there to begin with. That's the easiest thing you can do. All right, so with that, let me go throw this away again because I don't want it to get all over everything. If you still see, like if the isopropyl alcohol isn't taking it off, you want to be careful on painted parts because there are some solvents that'll take the paint off and then you'll create a bad situation and make it worse. So you might test a solvent on a small area of the board just to see. And then also keep in mind that the isopropyl alcohol, it needs to dry. And the result of that could change the coloration as it dries to be more or less noticeable depending on what thermal compound you're working with, what material it's on. Yeah, I think that looks all right. We'll see if I put it together and I notice it's getting darker or brighter, if I'm noticing a stain. These are easy areas to access to clean them, but we went from a small spot of thermal compound that got spread out now. And now the isopropyl alcohol has left behind, it's just a little discoloration, but I want to give that a couple minutes and we'll check it again. In the meantime, I'm done with this. That one's garbage. I'll put this back in the drawer. Eventually, I'll get everything organized here. Well, I'll have all this stuff behind me or in a drawer like I used to. Until then, I have to walk off and go get it, and I apologize for that, but we're making do as best we can in the meantime. With that, I can reattach, well, not reattach, I can attach the heatsink now. There's Mike's unboxing, reviews, and how-to. Arctic silver used to be horrible for spreading around when trying to clean up. Most of them are, in my opinion. I don't know that I've ever... Have you run into one, Mike, that's actually easy to clean up? I haven't. Seems like a universal trait they all have. Best to just apply it carefully. Now, part of me thinks I could have used a little more thermal compound. You know, when I said I put too much on and then that big glob of the original just came up on the finger, there was enough to cover it. And then there's a part of me that's like, as long as it's covered, you're fine. You don't want to put on too little and you don't want to put on too much. At the same time, there's a big gap between what's too little and what's too much. So what we'll need to do, what I need to do to meet my satisfaction is I will run a test on this with Cinebench, and we'll see how the temperatures are. I mean, this cooler in and of itself is far overkill for a 14500 chip, so I don't imagine there's a problem, but I want to find out about it first before my customer does. So if there's a problem, I'll solve it before the customer ever gets the machine. Because if I can't make it overheat, I guarantee my customer can't eat. And again, it's also about fan noise. If the CPU is running hotter than it should be running, then the fan's going to run louder than it needs to run. And then that leads to the support call, why is this thing so loud? And that could be a consequence of not putting enough thermal compound on, even though the chip's not overheating. Okay, so we do opposite corners, and we're just making sure that those are tight. Done with that driver. We have the power cable for the fan to plug in and the ARGB cable. So here's our power cable. And that'll plug in right here for CPU fan, which I guess usually it's the first header closest. A lot of times on some boards they change the color of the header so it's a different color for the CPU. It's also written in really fine print on the circuit board just above or beside the fan header, or you can read your documentation if you're not certain. I've got my 3X reading glasses here that cause my head to hurt if I wear them too long, but that should magnify. Yeah, I can see it says CPU fan on the fan header. There's 3 right up here, 1, 2, 3. It is this one. On other boards like ASRock or Asus, this is usually a different color to make it obvious. But, you know, how often are you going to be taking that on and off anyway? So there, we're done with that. And then this is our ARGB plug, and we just happen to have an ARGB header on this MSI board right there. Oh, look, I've got thermal compound on my thumb. How did that even happen? I don't know. It just magically gets everywhere. Okay, now I will zip tie that cable and make it look pretty, but first let's make sure everything works. We're done with this cooler. We're done with this empty box, and that NVMe drive will go back on the shelf. That empty tube will go into the trash. These glasses are making me nauseous. Let's get our power supply out. We want to make sure that that works. I'd hate to send a customer off with a brand new part, assuming without testing there's nothing wrong with the part. Most times the parts are fine. It's been a long time since we've got any part dead on arrival or DOA. But you know the one I don't test? That'll be the one that has a problem. So we go through the exact same testing processes and build processes and quality control processes, whether we're building a used computer, a new computer, whether it's going down the street, down the hallway, or across the United States. Everything is always done consistently the same. Otherwise, supporting any questions would be very, very difficult. If everything's always done different, how would I support it? I wouldn't be able to remember what I did differently for that one person that one time and never did it again. So in order to maintain my sanity and maintain the highest level of customer service, whether or not my consistency is a form of efficiency, it's there to keep everything easy to maintain in the future, not for today. If I don't hear from this customer in 3 or 4 years, I don't even remember his name, I'll know how I built that system because I built it the same. Barry Klein says that board is now useless with those stains. I'll take it off your hands for $5 so you don't have to pay the e-cycling fee. Yeah, I can't really tell if there's a discoloration or if it's the lights. And again, you just kind of need to let it sit and let it let that alcohol completely evaporate off of there. Like this one seems like it's gone away. I still see a little bit right here. So that's why you got to be patient with it. Don't try and fix something that's not broken. Verify it's broken first. So in the case of like staining, give it time to dry before you try anything else. Otherwise, you just keep re-wetting it and re-wetting it, and you're just going to go around in circles like, it's not possible to get this off. That's because it's not a stain. All right. What do we have in here? We have QR codes and documentation. Of course, the customer will get all that. We have the screws to secure the power supply. We have the power cable. That's good. And then we have our non-modular, $55, 80 plus bronze, 3-year warranty, EVGA, 650 watt, shallow power supply. And it's shallow in the sense that, look at the shape of it. Most power supplies are more square. They're a little bit longer where these cables come out. Most power supplies come out to about here. Now this can be an issue if you're running into a, say you've got a case where you've got your hard drives installed down at the bottom of the case, and it's tough to get between the power supply cables and the edge of your hard drive cage. You're not sacrificing anything on a smaller unit like this. Even if you don't need it, it's not hurting you to have a little extra space back here. I love this design. They're not any less reliable. The price was fantastic. 650 watts for $55 with a 3-year warranty. Again, 80 plus bronze certified. So, and lightweight as far as power supplies go because you don't have that extra inch or two back here. Easier fitment. There's no downside as far as I can tell. And we'll just set that right over there. All right, well, let's test our power supply. Let's test our motherboard. Let's look for a new BIOS update. And let's install Windows 11. If everything goes well, that'll be what happens in the next few minutes. Are you grabbing my box?
I am.
What?
I'm picking up after you.
I just put it there.
I will save it for you for later.
I don't want it. Thank you.
Wow.
I feel like the Jetsons. Rosie the robot, just every time I drop something, meep, meep, picks it up. All right, let me untangle this mess. Now this power supply does have the ability to add 2 EPS 12-volt power connectors to the CPU. And the reason for that is for overclocking. We're not overclocking this. It's not an overclockable chip. The customer stated they have no interest in that, so we only need to use one of these. It's a good thing because the power supply only provides us with one. A power supply that provides you with 2 is more of an enthusiast power supply. It's going to cost you more money. You can put the word enthusiast with more money. You put those 2 things together. Generally speaking, the enthusiast community will pay more. Whether or not they need it is not the question. It's because they want it. So when we have 2 connectors like this, they'll usually be labeled like power 1 and power 2. And on this board, I'm trying to see, I got to get those other glasses out again, if the one on my right is 1 or 2. Sometimes it doesn't matter, but there is typically a preference. It'll be often mentioned in the manual, or you just look on the circuit board for which one's labeled number 1. Okay, so number 1 is closest to the edge of the board. Number 2 is closest to the CPU. Since we're only using 1 and that's all we need, adding another one would be completely unnecessary and require a more expensive power supply. We plug that into number 1 and we leave number 2 empty. Now, if we were putting a 14900K in here and we were wanting to overvolt it, this one cable may not be enough to provide that power. It has nothing to do with the power supply so much as it has to do with people overriding the engineering specifications of the chip that then require more power from the chip. And then that power supply has to be designed to add that extra 12-volt rail or extra 12-volt EPS connection. So there's more to it than just adding a cable. Internally, the power supply has to handle that as well. All of that costs more to make, and because it's an enthusiast part, they can just make higher profit on it, because they can. Nothing wrong with making a profit, by the way. I try to offer my customers value is my primary concern. Value, performance, reliability, a balance. We don't want to sell them something that's so inexpensive that it goes obsolete in 2 years. We don't want to sell them something so expensive that it's worth half its value in 2 years. We try and ride right down the middle of best bang for the buck every single time. Every once in a while, I'll run into a customer that says, money's no object, give me the best of everything. And quite often, I'm like, yeah, I'm not your guy. Why? Because support costs on that are likely going to be more demanding with regards to how many problems they have. Nobody is buying a Ferrari because it's fuel efficient or because it's reliable. So if you buy a Ferrari, I hope you have a mechanic you trust, and I hope you have the money to maintain it, because it's a very expensive enthusiast car. That being said, that's fine for those people, but that's not a sustainable business model for me. We have built some high-end machines like Big Beast and et cetera here, but we don't sell those to people unless we really trust those people that we're selling them to. So Doug Betts has a $10,000 build, and Doug's maintained it on his own. Not that we would have any problem helping him if he had any questions, but he's a tech, so if he's stuck, we'll probably be stuck too. We have the second Threadripper build that was sold to a very knowledgeable local person here that loves it and utilizes virtual machines on it. Really takes advantage of the fact he's got a Threadripper. He's never had a support call on it, to the best of my knowledge. He loves his machine. He knows how to use it. But those are exceptions. Overall, when we're building high-end machines, there are channel builds that we use here, and then we deal with consequences. And if possible, we make videos out of it to show you why you shouldn't do it. But it's different than selling it to somebody and then taking accountability and responsibility for their aggravations, that something they purchased from us is now our responsibility. At least I feel that way. And I have to be very confident that a machine is a good value and reliable. If I think a machine is super inexpensive, but may only last a year, I don't want to sell it. I'll give it away. And even then, I'll give it away under very specific conditions that whatever happens is on you, that's just how it is. I won't accept responsibility for it. And if that doesn't work, we just take it to Goodwill or something and donate it. We never see it again. We'll never get a support call. That's what kills us, by the way. That kills reputation. Kills how people think of your quality. And everybody says it's great when they're getting the deal, but then when there's some side effects, then you're the terrible person that they were praising the days before. So I'd rather not even go down that road. If people want to go down that road, they're welcome to go down there without me. But I do make sure that what I sell is something I would use myself, something that I would trust in the hands of somebody I cared for, like a family member. I'm not going to rip off a family member. I'm not going to sell them junk. And I wouldn't do it to you either. We're all a big family here. All right, let's make sure the power supply is off. Let's do our first power on self-test. So I need an HDMI cable that I'm standing on. And now I'm standing on the other foot. And we're going to use, obviously we're using onboard video here. This is not a gaming machine. This is not an Xbox or a PlayStation. It isn't. We need a keyboard and a mouse, which I'll just use my standard wireless keyboard and mouse here. And we'll just plug this dongle into any USB port we have available. What else do we need? No internet. I need a power switch. Can I bring my power switch over here? Trying to remember if I brought one over here. Oh, yeah. Oh. This will work. If you have an old case, take the switch out of it. It's good to have as a tester. I see people shorting it out with a screwdriver and everything, and that's all well and good if you're a garage mechanic. But if you're a professional mechanic, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's just things professionals. These are red flags. If someone says they're professional and does things in an amateurish way, they're an amateur. Believe what they do, not necessarily what they say. And then set your expectations accordingly. All right, let's get these. This has what? An LED and a switch. We don't have to hook the LED up if we don't want to. We just need the switch part, which should go. Where's my front panel? Should be right here. This should fire up. So if I hit the switch to on, and then I hit this switch right here, we should see this fan start to spin. There it goes. RGB's lit up. We should see the RGB on the RAM light up here in a second. And now let's switch over to camera input 2 on OBS here so we can see it post. It already posted. Okay, we're off to a start, a good start. And let me grab my Windows 11 installation flash drive. We're going to be putting Windows 11 24H2 on here. I'm going to plug my flash drive into any USB port back here. And I'm going to shut the machine off. And I'm going to turn the machine back on again. And there it goes, just now fired up. Let's see how long it takes before we get a post power on self-test. There it is. And now, because the NVMe drive we plugged in is brand new, it has no format or partition on it. The only bootable device this machine can boot from is that Windows 11 installation USB. Without adjusting anything in the BIOS, this is how a BIOS works from the factory and why you should not be messing about with it, in my opinion. So, with that already booted, let me grab the other mouse and let's go to a regular setup process. United States, install Windows 11. Next, I'm going to say I don't have a product key. And we're going to install Windows 11 Pro. So because we didn't enter a product key, it doesn't know which version our product key is good for. We will be getting a Windows 11 product key. If we didn't already previously activate this, we'll know afterwards. If this has been activated previously, then the key will be reassigned to us the first time we visit Windows Update. We never have to enter it any more than once. But if I never activated this window, this version of Windows on this motherboard, because it's tied to the motherboard, I simply go to SCD keys, buy a Windows 10 Pro product key because it's cheaper, and use the Windows 10 Pro product key to activate Windows 11 Pro. No installation of Windows 10 is required. So Windows 10 Pro, accept the license agreement, and it's going to say, okay, let's see where we can install this. We should see two drives, the USB flash drive and the fanxiang S880 that we installed. Now, don't be confused that there's 6 drives or 5 drives here. Disk 0 is the fanxiang drive at 1.8 terabytes in size. It's a 2 terabyte drive. Disk 1, partition 1, disk 1, allocated space, disk 1, partition 2, disk 1. So this is all the flash drive. So pay attention to the disk number, right? That's our Windows 11 flash drive. We want the NVMe drive. And that's it. Now we wait, and the installation's off to the races. The system is whisper quiet. I think the RGB is a nice touch. It's not over the top. It can be turned off, but personally, my personal brand, I like it. Oh, I got to hit install. I see. Ready to install. I thought I was off to the races. Now we're off to the races. And while that is installing, let me jump back over to camera 1 and put myself in a corner. And now you and I can hang out a little bit while we wait. You know, builds like this, they're so much more enjoyable for me when everything kind of flows through the normal way. But I will say that if everything always flows through the normal way, I would be bored out of my mind and lose all desire to do it. So there has to be this balance in my life of challenge and frustration, along with familiarity and success. I know how to, I've seen this problem before. I know how to solve it. I've done it a million times before. Heck, even if I did it once before, the more often you do something, the more efficient you're going to get at it. But at the same time, if you become really, really proficient at something and you're no longer challenged, you might lose interest in it, because it's like a video game where you have to walk your little video character from the left side of the screen to the right side of the screen with no challenges and unlimited lives and no way to possibly end a life. That's all you do. You walk your little man from the left to the right. And then it moves to the next screen where you do it again, and you do it again, and nothing changes. It's always the same. It doesn't get slower, faster, harder, or easier. What's the point of playing that game? If there's no challenge, there's no fulfillment. Without fulfillment, there's no happiness. So with that logic, we like to see a little frustration. We like to not know everything and be surprised by seeing problems we've never seen in 30 years. How can you be in business for 30 years and have a problem you've never seen before? Thankfully, that still happens, because otherwise I would be bored out of my mind. So it can't be too extreme on the frustrating side, and it can't be too extreme on the boring side. Try and find your center. Get a little bit of both. Keeps me in this business. Keeps me coming back for more. Hey, Mitch Morrison joining us. I believe he's in Peru right now. Welcome in, Mitch. He says after Lima, he's going to Bogota. Bogota? How do you say that? In Colombia. I just think of that coffee commercial. Juan Valdez or something, I can't remember. Picks the coffee beans. Oh, showing my age now. Hopefully Mitch is having a great trip and the weather's cooperating. He says he just got his ticket to walk around Machu Picchu tomorrow, looking forward to it, and then off to Lima on Monday. Right on. Well, we're going to live vicariously through Mitch's adventures, and hopefully we'll see some more video updates from him. You can follow Mitch on Facebook. He's only posted like 3 whole photos, and I guess he's not a big sharer. I don't know. If it was me, you'd have 25 pictures every hour. But we're happy to see the updates, and always good to see him there. Make sure he's doing well. Mike's Unboxing, Reviews, and How-To said he just got an MSI Z890 Edge TI Wi-Fi board today, and after the Intel release reviews, I have no idea what CPU to use with it. First world problems. We could not find an Ultra 9 285K through any vendor at any time. Never saw it available for sale. As far as I can tell, it wasn't released. The Ultra 7, on the other hand, is $200 cheaper and darn near matches the specs of the $200 more 285K. I don't know why you would buy the Ultra 9 except that you're a content creator wanting to make a video. The value, in my opinion, and I think would mathematically be proven, you're getting much more bang for the buck with the Ultra 7, what is it, a 265K? To pay $200 more to get an extra like 7% doesn't make any sense. Now, if we could have gotten an Ultra 9, we would have bought it for the channel. We could not find one ever. Never was available. Not B&H Photo, not Newegg, not Amazon. Amazon doesn't even have a page for it. As far as I can tell, they never did. The Ultra 7, however, that will arrive for us today. The motherboard we ordered is the ASRock Phantom Z890 something. That was supposed to be available on the 24th, yesterday, and Amazon has informed us we will not see it until the first week of next month. So we're going to have the chip today. I thought the opposite was going to happen. But we're going to use the Ultra 7 because it makes more financial sense to do so. If money is no object and you want that extra few percentage points in performance between those two chips and you want to pay the extra $200, don't let me get in your way. We would have done it. We had the gift card money. We were going to buy it. We've never seen it for sale. So what do we do? Do we postpone not making the video until we can get our hands on an Ultra 9? Or do we get our hands on the Ultra 7, which is the one I'd recommend anyway, by the way. It's just a better value. Now, if you're a gamer, these chips aren't made for you, just so you know. Probably want to be looking towards AMD right now if you're a gamer. There's also a few other scenarios besides gaming where the higher end AMD chip may be better in Blender and things like that. But overall, workstation and production, unfortunately, I think the average content creator here on YouTube that reviews is more enthusiast gamer minded with an unlimited budget. For the rest of us who want to do actual work with our computers, there's really not a whole lot to get excited about on the new generation from Intel, but also at the same time, nothing to be afraid of. Like it's kind of, it's okay. It's not terrible and it's not great. It's a standard improvement over the last chip in most application uses. A little worse in some, but that's true of most new chips, or at least new first generation chips. It is a first generation chip, so it's likely going to have some issues, both with the motherboards, the BIOSes, and the chip itself. And the same is true with AMD. When Zen came out and Zen Plus came out, we struggled with issues with those for about 2 years before things smoothed out. And I said it then, and I'll say it now, nothing has changed. So we're prepared for that. We accept that. We're not selling that to any customers. We're going to put it in Mara's hands and let her beat the crap out of it. And we'll see if it survives her beating. And if we run into any problems along the way, we'll share those problems with you. Within about a year or so, we should be able to ascertain whether or not that's something we would recommend to customers. Right now, we're not recommending it to customers, and we don't want to take on that potential liability for damaging our reputation as selling quality or damaging our reputation with regards to the number of support issues. So we need to test it out first. We don't fear it, but we also don't offer it until we've had time to evaluate if it's worth offering. The chip itself is nothing terrible and it's nothing spectacular. I expect everything's going to be fairly routine for a first generation chip. It's not going to be smooth. There's going to be issues that are unacceptable. Those issues will likely be fixed through BIOS updates, and then the chip will be polished on the 16th gen along with the BIOSes, and from that point forward, we'll likely recommend it. But I'm speculating, I don't know. But if I was a gamer, I'd definitely be looking to AMD. But if I was a gamer, I'd be looking to Xbox or PlayStation. But that's just me. Now, I'm going to plug our Ethernet cable in, so let me get rid of our Windows 11 flash drive, and let me grab my Ethernet cable. There we go. And I don't know if the Ethernet driver's built into this. Because it's a brand new board, the Ethernet drivers may not be built into Windows. Let me see. Full screen. Oh, yeah, we got an IP address. Excellent. Let's go to Windows Update. You need to activate Windows. Well, let's find out. As I mentioned, when you activate your computer with an OEM license key of Windows, the Microsoft Windows servers recognize the serial number of your board, essentially, to make things as simple Even if it's not technically accurate, it's enough for you to get the gist of it. So as long as the serial number of the board doesn't change, that product key that you previously assigned the board will be recognized by the Windows Update server, and the product key will be reassigned to you and the product activated without you doing anything. You should never enter a product key more than once in a modern day Windows installation. Office might be a little different, but that's how Windows works. If you change your motherboard out, expect to buy a new key. Unless you bought a retail key. But retail keys cost about 10 times more. So you'd have to reinstall Windows 10 times before you got your money's worth. 10 different motherboards. And likely Microsoft may suspect you of piracy and shut it down before that happens if there's not enough space in between those activations. You're doing something funky. Something's suspect if you're having to reinstall on the same product key on different motherboards 10 different times in a short period of time. Now let me look at my system properties just to verify we've got the Core i5 14500, 32 gigs of RAM, and we've already established it's saying we need activation, but let's let it get through this round of Windows updates. And then we'll also look for any additional drivers we need to install, like the Intel SMIO driver. And then that should make the device manager happy. I imagine we probably have some devices in here that are not happy. Quite a few. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Some of these devices will be automatically fulfilled by Windows Update, and others we will download the Intel SMIO driver from the motherboard manufacturer, and that should be it. Now, the newer your computer is as far as technology goes, the more likely you're going to deal with this. If your computer's a couple of years old, those drivers may already be added to Windows Update, but it doesn't happen overnight. Oh, we can start, those are already starting to go away as Windows Updates apply. But what ends up happening when you have brand new hardware, the drivers have not yet been integrated into Windows Update yet. It takes time. They have to test everything. They don't just willy-nilly release that stuff. They want to make sure that it's not going to cause a problem. So it goes through a lot of testing. So in the meantime, while that's happening, you have to go get your drivers from the motherboard manufacturer directly for any missing device drivers. That's Intel or AMD across the board. It's the way it's always been. The newer the tech is, like if you have a Z890 board, I guarantee you most of that stuff's not going to be a Windows Update. So again, it's all about setting expectations. Let's see what else we got going on in the chat room here. Nick Caffrey said he had an interesting glitch when he upgraded Windows 11 23H2. His Epson Perfection V330 photo scanner, which is 12 years old, suddenly had no on-screen buttons showing. If I click where they used to be, they appear. Yes, well, anytime you try and mix and match old hardware and new hardware, I can almost guarantee you that will be a source of frustration. And by saying old, I'm referring to anything that's 8 years or older being combined with something that's brand new and just came out at some point in the year we're living in. To expect that to work, I think, is unreasonable. If it does work, you got lucky. If it doesn't work, and you've got a 12-year-old scanner, scanners are cheap these days. They're faster. They do better job scanning. They take up less desk space. They use less power. They just work better. You're almost punishing yourself by holding on to something that is very inexpensive to replace and living with the frustrations that will only get worse with time. If you got 12 years out of that thing, I don't know what you paid for it, but it more than paid you back. If you have no reason to replace it, then don't replace it. But the minute you start having problems, I don't think it's worth any more time. But again, this is what I would tell a paying customer. Paying customer would pay me more to fix that than to just simply buy a new one. So keep in mind, a lot of what I suggest comes from an attitude of running a business. And if you were a customer contacting me, which he isn't, the solution would be a very easy one. Just replace the unit. Why torture yourself for a few dollars? The fact that you even tried it, kudos to you for giving it a shot. And yeah, I suppose it still works, and if you want to live with it like that, that's your choice. Phil Stodd said, does this CPU have the overclocking problem? The problem is not in the CPU. The problem is in the motherboard BIOS. So let's be clear that there is no CPU issue here. Never has been. This has been an issue of the motherboard manufacturers, all the big ones, MSI, ASRock, Asus, Gigabyte, being guilty of overvolting your chip, some more extremely than others. That is not the fault of the CPU, okay? You could say, hey, are those Goodyear tires you put on your car still causing car crashes? No, the drivers of those cars are causing the car crashes. There's nothing wrong with the tires. Let's identify where the source of the problem is. If, and this has happened, going back to the car tire example, if I take my car to the tire shop and they fail to tighten the lug nuts down, is that a fault of the rim, the nuts, the tire, or the driver? No, it's the fault of the installer who didn't do a good job. The good news is all of the future Intel chips, 15th gen and onward, cannot be overvolt. It's not possible, because instead of using one monolithic chip, which is how Intel has always done it, they're following more of AMD's design, where it's what we call chiplets, little tiles. But underneath that heatsink, if you lift that heatsink up that covers the top of the CPU, you'll see a bunch of little chips instead of just one big one. All those little chips have different voltage requirements. You can't just slam a bunch of voltage and they all take it equally. It doesn't work that way. So this problem was going to go away one way or the other. But make no mistake about it, the issues with overvolting was a direct cause from motherboard manufacturers only. That's why it's very important, if you have a 12th, 13th, or 14th gen motherboard, make sure you get the latest BIOS if you want to make sure your chip lasts as long as possible, isn't running hotter than it needs to run, and it's also being more efficient, not costing you more in electricity than you need to be spending. This was a grave and unforgivable error that nobody in manufacturing boards was above. The problem with the board manufacturers is they're fickle. They see reviews that MSI makes a Z790 board that runs faster than, let's say, Gigabyte Z790. So what are they doing differently than us? We're getting slammed in the public space with loosely defined information of what is better. So if the MSI board runs faster with the same Intel chip than the Gigabyte board, and you're watching enthusiast reviews who have no idea how this stuff works, they're looking at benchmarks. They go, look, these benchmarks look better on the MSI board using all the same parts as they do on the Gigabyte board. So Gigabyte says, well, what choice do we have? We can't battle this ignorance. We have no choice but to join into this mind share that is a perception being perpetuated by the enthusiast community that is oblivious overall to why these differences exist. People don't want to hear the explanation why. Clearly, if they did, this would have never happened. If Gigabyte would have said, we're not stooping to that level because we don't think people are that stupid to fall for it, I would have a lot more respect for them. But Asus stooped, Gigabyte stooped, MSI stooped, and ASRock, they all stooped. They said, these people don't understand how they're getting more performance, and they're making us look bad because we're not doing it. Thereby, they're forcing us to break their chips, or they won't buy our products. I would have so much more respect for a manufacturer that said, we're not going to treat you like you're that dumb, so we're not going to do that. Our board runs slower because our board is more reliable and follows the engineering specs of Intel. Not a single board manufacturer stepped up. Not one. They all played this game being steered by the enthusiast community, and they all paid the price for it. Intel paid the price for it, Intel's reputation, Intel's warranty costs, and on top of that, board manufacturers have had to pay for BIOS developments to address this, that it was all done like, it was psychological. It was all completely psychological. It was all unnecessary and all avoidable. Intel could have stopped it, and they didn't, but it never should have been happening. And one board manufacturer One of them should have said, we're not playing that stupid game. Our customers aren't that dumb. But universally, all these board manufacturers believe you're all that dumb. And they have the sales figures to prove it, because when they did it, sales went up. So if you're the board manufacturer, what would you do? Would you take the high road and say, I'm not participating in the nonsense, and then have to explain to your shareholders why your sales are down? It was a messed up situation, but it cannot be repeated, because the new Intel chips going forward, that cannot work anymore. Their design, it doesn't make it feasible or possible. But it was never, ever an Intel CPU problem. It was always a motherboard problem. And there was no motherboard manufacturer who rose above it. Stupid. It's not like these board manufacturers haven't been making motherboards for years. It's not like they didn't know what they were doing when they did it. And now that they did it, the competitors had to do it. What choice did they have? Stupid. All right, we're going to restart. I got the wrong screen up. Hold on. Now I can see the mouse. I was moving the mouse and I wouldn't see it move for like 20 seconds. I realized I was watching the wrong feed. Anyway, if you make sure you have the latest BIOS installed on your Intel 12th, 13th, or 14th gen motherboard, you're good to go. That's how it should have been released to begin with. No excuse for it. It was all pure greed. The greed on behalf of the customers who demanded, I want that performance without having to pay more. The greed on behalf of the motherboard manufacturers willing to sacrifice their integrity and the impression of the quality of their build in order to make the sale. And for the fact that Intel allowed it and did nothing to control their board makers, their board partners, so they could sell more chips. It was all about the money. And now their reputation is damaged. How much money is that going to cost them to fix? It's going to cost them a lot more than they made, I'll tell you that. So let's hope they learned a lesson from it. Either way, as I already said, it doesn't matter. You cannot do that to these new chips. It's not possible. That whole thing was the dumbest thing I've ever seen in 30 years of this business. Unprecedented from manufacturers who have a history of manufacturing. They know better, and they did it anyway, all for the almighty dollar, just to convince you were getting more for your money. You weren't. I'm going to sell you a house on a hill, because that way your car will go faster when you're leaving. Wait, don't I have to go back up the hill? Don't worry about that. When you're leaving, the car goes faster. You don't even have to start the engine. You just put it in neutral and roll it right down the hill. You'll get to 60 miles an hour. Uses no gas. That sounds great. Oh, by the way, I can't steer and I don't have any brakes. Oh, yeah, well, there's that. Sometimes the world doesn't make any sense. Okay, let's go back to Windows updates. I'll get rid of that. Now my first question is, did this activate? So I'm going to right click and go to System, and we're going to check our activation status. Let's go up here to Activation. Oh, I am picking the wrong keyboard as always. Activation settings. Okay, so that means I never activated this, but that's okay. With SCD keys, PayPal's being used again, so we can use PayPal and spend $16.55 to buy a Windows 10 Pro key, and then type it in, and we'll activate that. But we'll do that much later. We want to make sure that's one of the last things we do. Just in case there's any reason we have to return a board or change any parts, we don't want to lose our process, or we don't want to lose our license key in that process. So Windows can run forever without a license key. You don't have to have it. It's just some of the customization features of Windows, like changing your wallpaper and stuff, require activation for personalization, but it won't restrict ever. You can use Windows 10 or 11 indefinitely and never buy a license for it. It is optional. Whoops, let me go. I still am having a hard time finding the right mouse here. Go back to settings, back to Windows Update, and retry all. And while that's running, let me just make a few changes. We'll edit our power. I swear, get that keyboard out of my face. We're going to edit our power plan. Whoops, that's not what I want. Start without, turn that off. Well, I guess I was going to have to do this anyway. Get rid of that. Let's close all that. Okay, so I want search permissions. Let's get rid of that ugly little advertising down there. Turn that off. And then let's type in edit power right there, edit power plan. And we want to make sure that display stays on for 3 hours. I don't want it to turn off while we're live. And I never want a computer that doesn't have a battery to go to sleep. Sleep mode is for preserving batteries on portable devices. I don't know why it's even an option on a desktop. Turn it off if you're done with it, or leave it on and have your monitor turn off. Sleep mode is for preserving batteries, but whatever. It wouldn't bother me so much if there weren't so many darn support calls with why sleep mode isn't working. It's not waking up properly. You shouldn't even be using it. You wouldn't have the problem. Hey, Doc, it hurts when I do this. Well, don't do that. Thanks, Doc. All right. Phil Stodd said, I'm using the same MSI motherboard you have with a 14700K. The PL1 is showing a max 250 watts, and the current max is 37.5. That doesn't sound right. So power level 1 is your low power, idle, and then your power level 2 is your turbo power. And it's typically defined with defaults based on what cooler you tell the MSI motherboard you have. So we'll take a look here because I'm glad you brought this up because I wanted to check for a BIOS update and I forgot. But now we're in Windows and this makes it easier anyway. So it looks like, first of all, looks like we're good on our Windows updates. And I just need to get these other keyboards out of my way. We're good on Windows updates. Let me check the device manager right quick. See if anything else is missing. Oh, everything came in through Windows Update. Wonderful. That's what I want to see. Now, the board we have, if you look at the box in front of me, it's an MSI. It is a Pro Z790-P Wi-Fi, and I'll type the word BIOS. And then we're going to look for the MSI website. Ignore all this other stuff. That's the board. Under drivers and downloads, takes us right to where we want to go. We can accept these cookies. And it shows the latest BIOS released was just a month ago. And it's version 7E06, version AF1 beta. You don't have to fear these betas. By the time they offer a beta to the public, it's pretty well done. It's very rare that they ever retract a beta. Like if you have to go somewhere special to a hidden download link, that's a beta I'd be worried about. But when it comes to modern day betas being offered as a regular download, I wouldn't hesitate to put a beta on today. If you're still hesitant, just go to the one before, right? But that goes back a couple of weeks. From the 9th of September, something changed on the 26th. So I'm going to download the beta. And you'll see that my camera's probably blocking the view. So let me get rid of the camera here. You can see that downloaded in the upper right corner. And then let's extract that file. And just let that go in our downloads directory. And we want the big file. See, there's a little tiny file here and a big file here. We just want the big one. and we right click on it and choose to copy it. And then I'm going to grab just an ordinary everyday blank flash drive. Small capacity is preferred. And I've got one in the drawer here. There we go. This is a flash drive I like to use a lot with BIOS updates. They're very inexpensive, they're disposable, and they seem to be relatively reliable by anything that some flash drives don't work with some motherboards, especially real cheap ones. These were really inexpensive and they work well. Even updating the firmware on my Samsung televisions, it saw these drives just fine. So I'm going to just plug the drive in. I keep these drives blank. That way I'm not going to accidentally select the wrong file. And then after we update the BIOS, I erase the drive so it's ready to be used again as a blank flash drive. I don't have to confuse myself with, why are there files on this? Which file is the one I needed? All of that confusion is avoided by simply using a clean flash drive. So I'm going to go here to the USB drive I plugged in, right click and paste. It's a relatively small file. Now we can use a free utility like CPU-Z to determine what BIOS we have now, but I can tell you I have not put a BIOS on this in September. So whatever BIOS has been released in September, I guarantee I don't have it. So let's restart, and as the machine restarts, we'll press the delete key over and over again. Just as the post screen starts to appear, we'll start repeatedly pressing the delete key right now, and that should take us into the BIOS, and it did. And we look in the BIOS under M-Flash for MSI. It's a little different on MSI boards. It needs to reboot, which is very strange. So we're going to allow that to reboot. We can also see our current BIOS version in there, which I honestly can't be bothered to look at because I already know. It's been a while since I've turned this unit on. Now, when the system comes back up, it'll confirm with us when we select the BIOS what version we have and what version we're going to and if it's compatible. So you can't put the wrong BIOS on. Now you'll notice it's offering these sources for the BIOS. We want our general UDisk. And down here at the bottom, it says current BIOS is version VAC1, built in February. And the BIOS we're going to put on is version VAF1. So we missed D and E. We're going right to F, and we're going forward 7 months in development. That's what we want. So just double click on that. And it says, are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. And that's it. Now leave it alone, and it'll let you know when it's done. If you decide to override this or interrupt it, the consequences are yours and yours alone. Once this loads, then you're going to want to load your BIOS defaults. So when this is all updated, and this is pretty true regardless, this is just a good practice on any motherboard when you update the BIOS. Once your BIOS update's complete, go in and select Load BIOS Defaults. And that way, everything gets returned to factory defaults. And then if you had made some customizations, go back and recustomize it, but make sure it works first by setting it back to defaults. That way, any changes you make, if they affect the reliability or performance in a negative way, you know it's because of the changes you made and where to point the blame. Don't just assume those changes you're making are good. Don't assume you're outsmarting engineers. You probably aren't. But just in case you might be, have evidence to prove. So make sure it runs stable and rock solid. And then when you make your changes, if it's improved, you'll know it's a direct result of the changes. And if it runs worse, you'll know it's the direct result of your changes. Either way, we'll know where the source of sadness or praise is. Now, when this reboots again, I think it'll be done. It should boot us back into Windows if it's happy. Some BIOS updates, the system may reboot 3 and 4 times. Again, hands off of it the whole time. Don't be impatient. Find something to distract yourself if you have anxiety. If you interrupt it, if you think it's done and it's not responding fast enough, you may damage it. So make sure you give it enough time to do what you've asked it to do. When it's done, it'll be very obvious. If you've waited 20 minutes, it's ridiculous, something's wrong. Now, we go back over here to our desktop, and let's go ahead and shut the machine down one more time and get back in the BIOS. Well, wait a minute. I'm done with the BIOS, right? So I suppose the first thing I want to do is delete the BIOS. So I no longer want it in my downloads directory because we'll never need it again. And I want the flash drive empty so I can use it next time. Right? One thing at a time is what I'm trying to say. Now let's restart and go back into the BIOS and load those BIOS defaults. While it's rebooting, I'll take my flash drive out, put it back where it goes so it can be used the next time I need to use it. And we hit delete to get into the BIOS. And we're going to go over to, well, first of all, let me make sure my camera's not covering up. We're going to go over here to I have MSI. One thing I hate about MSI is this BIOS. Advanced mode, I guess, is what we want. Now we can verify our BIOS version right here. It says F1 with the BIOS build date, our chip, our board make and model. Settings. This is just information. Advanced. This thing has Thunderbolt on it? Does it? Not sure. Oh, don't mind me while I fumble around here. This is our boot options. Save and exit. Restore the defaults. That's what we want. We want to restore all of our optimized defaults. Now, it's quite possible when we go to easy mode, I like to turn on the CPU fan. I wish that was on by default. We want our TPM module turned on for Windows 11 compatibility. And when it comes to voltage, our PL1 and our PL2, that is likely under advanced. Is it under overclocking? Yeah. And it says cooler, the CPU cooler. Do you want Intel default settings of a PL1 of 65 watts and the performance settings are 253? These are three different options. And 4096 means infinite. We want the Intel default PL1 settings, which are 65 watt on the PL1, but you'll notice it doesn't offer us anything on PL2. This is an MSI thing, but that's where you want it. And you'll see I didn't have to change it. That was the default. By resetting it to default, if you do the same thing, you should have the same result. That's the point of having the latest BIOS. You don't have to be technical and find PL1 and PL2 settings. You adjust what cooler you have. So if you had a liquid cooler, you could bring those voltages up a little bit. But even if I had a liquid cooler, I would still want it running as though I had an air cooler. I want the voltages to be Intel's recommended, at least as far as running a business and supporting my customers. I'm not going to give my customers less efficiency, a higher cost of ownership in electricity cost, and then degrade their CPU by adding more voltage to it than the engineers designed it to run just because you can get 7% more out of it. It's not worth it in my business to destroy my business over 7% that my customer will never notice. That's an enthusiast activity. So even if we had a liquid cooler, if it's going to a customer, we still want default voltages. That's it. Now I can hit escape and hit escape again. No, that's not what I want. I want to go to X, save and exit, yes. Now we can run Cinebench and we can take a look at the PL1 and PL2 settings in Cinebench, and we can verify that the CPU is not getting too hot, it's not being overvolted. This is how the motherboard should have been released, in my opinion, right out of the gate, with the option for the enthusiast to go into the BIOS, who has the technical mindset to know how to do that, to enable overvolting if they wanted to do this to themselves, but it should not have been imposed upon users without their consent or permission. Consent and permission are the same thing, without their knowledge or consent. That was bogus, that all 4 motherboard manufacturers behaved in this despicable way, in my opinion. So let me grab my utilities flash drive, and let's grab Cinebench, and let's prove it, right? We've got all the numbers look right, but does the performance match the information? Well, there's only one way to know for sure, and that's to test it and see it for yourself through experience. So I'm going to go to my flash drive, I'm going to go to my PC testing software, and we're going to copy over Cinebench R23. I like to copy over CPU-Z and Crystal Diskmark just to make sure our drive is performing as it should. And hardware info, that's what I'll use to monitor our temps. And I also will bring over VLC because I like to install that for clients. And of course, Uncle Carey's Windows 10 Optimizer. And then these are a couple of Windows 24H2 fixes that I run that will be implemented into our new Windows 11 optimization tool next year. So let's start with HWI. That's our hardware information. This is a free download. And we'll click OK. We run the portable version. We're not installing anything on our client's machine. We only want the sensors. And we're going to bring up our current settings before we run Cinebench. We want to make sure everything's happy. So core temperatures. Look how chilly that is. 34°C, that's our current temp. 42 is as hot as it's ever gotten since we started this HWI software. And the system's whisper quiet. There's all 14 cores. Now, if we look down a little further, we'll find PL1 is at 65 watts and PL2 is at 154. If you Google your chip, you'll see what these numbers should be, and it should match. The official PL1 and PL2 from Intel should match these numbers here. Let's go ahead and run Cinebench. Usually the first 90 seconds are the worst with regards to driving temps and voltages up. So if it's going to happen, it's typically going to happen in the first 90 seconds of when I hit start. And let's keep a look at what's going on here. So what we're looking at in this first row is our current PL1 settings, our minimum PL1 and our maximum. Over here, we're looking at our current PL2, our minimum and our maximum. See, they don't change. This is the way Intel designed it to run, not the way the motherboard makers unwisely imposed upon you standards that you had to be of scientific mind and knowledge to know how to manipulate. Now it's back to out of the box where it should be. Now notice that our temps have gone up during the first few seconds of this test running, and our maximum temps are where we want to pay attention. It momentarily hit 86 degrees Celsius. That's what it's supposed to do. It's not supposed to stay there. And I want it to more or less not get any hotter than that. If we don't exceed 86, if that's the worst of it, I think we're good to go. In fact, we could probably get up to about 90 if it's just momentary. It's not a big deal. If you want to run it at 90 every moment of every day, you're probably going to degrade the life of the chip. There will be long-term consequences. That's just not sustainable. So right now our temperature is 61. You'll see the cores vary a little bit in temperature, right? Some of these cores these efficiency cores in particular are relatively cool compared to our performance cores, which take more power. Anything that takes more power generates more heat. That's kind of physics. And then over here, this is the minimum temp recorded throughout since we started the software. And then this is the maximum temperature recorded on each core since we started the software. And that will stay until we shut the software down or restart the computer. So likely the worst of it is 86. That's leaving everything alone. That's a standard air cooler from Intel, a standard thermal compound application. Nothing is extreme. Everything is intended for the everyday user to have the best out-of-box experience for the longest period of time, completely trouble-free, reliable, free of blue screens, free of crashes, and free of performance variances, and free of high electric bills that are disproportionate to the amount of power you're getting back. That's called efficiency. If you're pulling 120 watts, but you're only giving me back 6% performance increase from when you're pulling 65 watts, that means you're paying for a lot more and you're consuming a lot more to get a little back in return. That's no value. That's called efficiency. And if you don't mind paying the added electric bill and having the extra cooling necessary to deal with the extra power so you can get 7% more power, I can't help you. You are way too finicky for being a customer of mine. You're a very difficult person to make happy. If you want to pursue that, don't let me get in your way, but that's not how we run a business. That would be a very difficult way to make ends meet at the end of the month if that was my job. So we try to build everything where it makes practical sense financially, in performance, reliability, sustainability, and support, so our customers always have a good experience. If the customer says, I need 7% more, then let's build you a better computer. Let's change the chip to a higher end chip. If you need an extra 7% or an extra 12%, you underbought. Maybe you shouldn't have underbought. And what you saved on the CPU, you'll now be spending on the cooler and in your time trying to diagnose the frustrations that occur the minute you start overvolting it, along with the degradation you'll be applying to the CPU, reducing its overall lifespan. That's your choice, but make sure you understand the possible ramifications of your choices. You will not be a victim. If you were warned ahead of time and you did it anyway, you knew what to expect. It goes the same for all of us. If you want to take that risk, go for it. I don't run any risk in my business. I avoid it as much as possible because I'm not a good risk taker. I've owed Subaru Mike many dinners from picking football teams I thought were going to win. I think I won once out of 6 times. It's definitely not my skill. But the choice is yours to make. But I really, really want you to have understanding of what you should expect as a result of your choices. If you leave it as stock, you should have a good experience. The minute you think you can outsmart the engineers, your consequences are yours. You're free to go either way, but you're not a victim. So choose your path. Enjoy your journey. Phil Stodd said he's going to update to the AF BIOS. I'm wary of betas. Well, again, that wariness, that comes from the early days when betas were betas. Today, betas aren't really for a beta to be released publicly, it's got to be pretty solid these days. Computers are no longer a niche thing that only a few hobbyists endure. It's rather an everyday thing that corporations and people in general can't live without anymore. So they're not going to willy-nilly release a flaky BIOS. It won't even make it to the download point until it's at least stable enough that they believe it's ready. They just haven't had time to certify it yet. That's all. And then when they certify it, they're going to re-release that BIOS again without the beta code. In other words, it may be named as a beta. And they'll take that naming off of it, and then it'll be a new download. But it'll be, in most cases, it'll be the exact same beta BIOS, just with a different name on it. Unless something's wrong with it. If something's wrong with it, it won't be available to download anymore because they don't want the support calls. If people are downloading a beta BIOS and they're having problems as a result of that beta BIOS will no longer be available for you to download. I mean, it's common sense. So that's how it is today. If you see a beta available, and especially if it's been there a while, it hasn't been taken down, it's probably fine. It just hasn't gone through the bureaucracy of dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's to officially take it out of beta status. It takes time. And you can wait for that if you want to, but it likely, very rarely do they ever recall a beta BIOS. It's usually just taking the beta name off of it. That's usually all it involves. And now it's an official BIOS. Don't let the terminology poison your mind. Now, when you have a negative experience with a beta BIOS, you let me know. But when you have a negative imagination of a beta BIOS, I can't help you with that. Let me grab a cold drink. We're about 20 minutes after our end time here, and I haven't gotten this in the case yet. But that's pretty much all we have to do at this point is put the motherboard into the case, put the power supply into the case, I need to get an activation from SCD keys and activate Windows, and then cable manage it, and that's it. And it'll be ready for Richard, and I'm sure he's going to really like this computer. And we'll be excited to get his Asus 12th Gen pre-built on the bench and figure out what the heck is going on with it, because the way he's describing it sounds like a pretty baffling problem. But what he's describing and then what we experience personally may be two different things. Maybe not. I won't know until I have it in front of me. So I'm looking forward to that, and that'll be a future video here. I don't know when yet, but hopefully within the next week or two, I hope. Why is the BIOS black and white? What's wrong with black and white? Why is your BIOS a different? I'm not sure I can answer that question. Do you think I designed it that way? Does it matter? I can't answer all your questions. Some of them I can't make heads or tails of. When we look at today's parts, that's what I forgot to do. Here are the parts that we're using. We'll get the test running. Let's go over to my window capture. So this is the case. This case came out in 2017. So again, there's no USB Type-C on it. It looks like this may be sold out. I don't know that they make this case anymore, that this just may not be remaining inventory. But it still has the slot bays that Richard requests for DVD and Blu-ray drives, and that's fine. And then over here, we've got our motherboard. This is the MSI Z790p Wi-Fi. This is a 12th, 13th, and 14th gen supported board with Wi-Fi 6E and Bluetooth 5.3. It has 2.5 gig LAN built in and supports Gen 5 on the PCIe. You'll see here it's $200. Boards are getting pricier and pricier, but MSI has never been known as a bargain motherboard maker. Over here, we've got our Intel Core i5-14500, $240. That comes with a cooler, not the Laminar cooler. It comes with the cooler that we took off and replaced, but we didn't have to. The cooler it comes with is fine. This is the Intel Laminar cooler we use, the RH1. This comes included with 12900, 13900, and 14900 CPUs, non-K versions only. And you cannot buy it separately except where people sell them individually, like on eBay. Intel does not sell them separately. Our RAM we're using in today's build is the OLOy DDR5. It's 2 sticks of 16 gig, 6000 megahertz, and 2 sticks of 16 for a total of 32. Over here, we've got our fanxiang S880 drive. It says it's $129.98, but there's a 20% coupon that's going to take, well, 10% would be $13. And if this is 20%, that's 2 times 10%. That's $26. So $26 off. And if I was logged in with my Prime account, I think this is actually cheaper with a Prime account. It should be around $100. For 2 terabytes, and it's as fast or faster than Western Digital's what's it called? SN850X for about $50 less price, same warranty. And they have multiple, you can buy the 1 terabyte version. There also is a 20% coupon. And then there's a 4 terabyte. 4 terabytes starting to get affordable. We're looking at 20% off would be about $30 off at 10%, so double that for 20, about $60 off. Be around $232, something like that, for 4 terabytes, and it's fast with a 5-year warranty. That's a pretty good deal. We've never seen one of these go bad, and we've installed over 3 dozen of them so far. Nothing has gone bad yet, and all the components underneath the sticker are the same components you find on the name brands. Over here is the final tab with the EVGA 650 watt BP, that's the bronze 80 plus bronze certified, 3-year warranty, shallow, compact is what they call it, power supply. $55 is a bargain all day long, if you ask me. So those are the parts in today's build. I apologize that I forgot to go through that earlier. Our Cinebench test has finished, and those are our Cinebench final results up here on the top left. Let's go ahead and run the second test, and then we'll wrap up for today. I think that's as far as we're going to get it today. In the meantime, I can put the old cooler back up on the shelf for some future build. Our empty tube of thermal compound can go in the trash. Our Samsung 980 Pro can go back on the shelf for future parts. The fanxiang box can go with the customer, along with all the additional computer parts that we're not using, such as SATA cables, the Wi-Fi antennas, the M.2 screws. Actually, this M.2 uses, they have some quick disconnects. But regardless, all of the components that come with the motherboard are all kept in the motherboard box, including the manuals, any extra cables. That all goes to the customer. I don't keep any of that. That way, if the customer wants to upgrade or do their own work, they have everything as if they would have bought this themselves, and they're just paying me to build it. And they'll have a warranty through MSI. I'll warranty what I sell, don't get me wrong, but if you're hours and hours away from me, you can also deal with your warranty the same way as if you bought all these components directly from the company. So you have a warranty through the motherboard maker, the warranty through Intel, the motherboard, the RAM warranty, the solid state drive warranty, the power supply warranty are all honorable by these companies as though the end consumer put this together themselves. Doesn't make a difference who put it together. Just want you to know that. If the customer does want help with me, of course, everything I build, I guarantee, and they can always reach out to me. But if customers are located really far away, that may not be a practical solution. And some customers are very good at taking care of their own, but they don't need to come back to me to get receipts or permission. Typically, the serial numbers alone are all the companies need to identify and authorize an RMA. And if a customer does have any issues where a receipt is needed, and it's something I have that that I provided, obviously I'm not going to stand in the way. They can have the receipt. The thing about receipts, when companies want receipts, you can write up your own receipt. In other words, you can say, Carey, can you give me a receipt that you sold this to me? Or you can just make up your own receipt that says you bought it from Carey. The company doesn't restrict who can sell it to you. They have no way of authorizing that receipt. So you could just make your own. But regardless, I guess they expect most people to be on the honor system with that. So if I have a Newegg or Amazon receipt for that product and you need it, which you shouldn't, for the warranty, I just send it off as a PDF to you. No big deal. But again, you can always open up a Word document, take any receipt, just change the name of it, or create one in Excel. There's no official receipt form that is accepted. It's just a receipt. That's pretty well universal, at least here in America. Jump right back in the chat here. Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How-To says, I just got a Z890 Edge Wi-Fi board today. And after the Intel release reviews, I have no idea what CPU to use. Wait, we already said that. I think my chat has fallen behind. The ingredient says Project Zero has been flawless and rock solid, and the Ace Magician mini PC is working flawlessly as well. Right on. My browser hasn't crashed today. That's a nice change. I wonder how much memory it's taking up right now. It's only 315 megs. 734 megs on the other side. Hey, Mara? Yes? Have you crashed today? I crashed 6 times. 6 times? Wow. Let me check the phone before we say goodbye. I also want to check our temps here one more time. Everything looks good. Where was I? The folks at Minis Forum are having a Halloween sale, and we'll talk more about that, or you can poke ahead and take a look at some of the good deals they've got going on right now. And we have some exciting news from Acronis coming up here very soon as well that I can't wait to share with you. Phil Stodd said, I just updated the BIOS on that machine. It's showing an Intel default PL1 at 253. So the question is, you said you had a, what was it, did you load the BIOS defaults, save and exit? That's question one. And then question two is the chip. You're running a different chip than me, right? You're running a 14700K. And the 14700K, I swear I'm going to keep using the wrong keyboard. 14700K. PL1, PL2 specs. Your PL1 should be 253, well, in performance mode, and your PL2 should be 253. Now let's see what Intel says just to verify. Remember K processors? Yes, you should see a PL1 of 253 watts and a PL2 of 253 watts by default on a 14700K. We have a 14500K. That's a more efficient chip that runs at 65 watts. You get twice, well, you're getting 4 times the power consumption for maybe 17% more performance. The more power you keep sucking up, the less return you're getting. By default, the 14700K is designed to have a PL1 and PL2 of 253 watts. That is correct. Your motherboard has set it correctly. So don't expect to see the numbers on a 14500K apply to your Don't expect to see the numbers of a 14500 non-K to be the same as a 14700K. K processors are always going to be less efficient. Always. If you don't want that, stop buying the K processor. You'll have a chip that's easier to cool, and the performance difference will be rather unnoticeable unless you're an extremely demanding user or you're just chasing benchmarks. That's my opinion anyway, for whatever it's worth. Now, just to check one more time here on our temps. Look at that. So 86 was the hottest we got. It was just on Core 5, and it was momentary. Didn't stay there very long. And if we scroll down once again, we can see our minimum and maximum PL1 and PL2 limits here, and they've not budged. They're staying exactly where they're supposed to. Everything is working how it should have been working all along. Someone tried to outsmart the engineers, and we all paid the price. What are you going to do? Let's hope the lesson stays with them, okay? Because I don't want to go through this again. I don't even understand how they couldn't know any better. I think they were ignoring anything but getting your money. And I think they were willing, they being the motherboard manufacturers, were willing to throw everything away to get another dollar from you. And it didn't matter what the consequences were. They were only thinking of right now. How do we get your money today? Don't worry about if we have to say, I'm sorry, later. Get that money. And now there's going to be long-term ramifications to that attitude as they've lost the public trust. Every motherboard manufacturer, MSI, Gigabyte, Asus, and ASRock, have all lost all of the integrity and trust they built up with their customers just to grab money. They made it very clear, your money is more important to us than your happiness. And damn the consequences. And now they have probably spent more in damage control than they ever made. So let's hope they learn their lesson from it. Ron Barnish said he's had no crashes today. And that he sent an Amazon gift card. Well, that's good news, Ron. It's definitely a bad day yesterday for a lot of us. And Charlie Purdy sends an Amazon gift card. Here's a token of my appreciation to two great people in a great community. Right on, Charlie. Thank you for the Amazon gift card. And Ron Barnish with an Amazon gift card. He says, have not sent one for a while. Got some birthday money to spend. Here's a $10 Amazon gift card. Right on. Thank you, Ron. Thanks to the community for supporting us here so that we don't have to become a puppet indebted to some corporation, beholden to some corporation telling us what we can say. My words are my own. I'm not reading a script. And if I were, I'd be the one writing it. The minute we take corporate money, we can be a lot better off financially, but then we lose our public trust. And I'd rather have your trust than your money. And in order for us to continue to make our videos without that corporate influence, the amount of content and the type of content that we make is dependent upon what is budgeted. So you guys enable us to be free and clear of bias. We can buy what we want to buy. We review what we want to review. And if companies want to send us product in exchange for review with no money and no conditions, every once in a while we find a cooperative company like Minisforum who regularly send us items for review, and sometimes we run into problems and we work with them on it, and it seems very reciprocal for both of us. A lot of times corporations don't want to hear about the problems. They want you to make a commercial, but they just don't say it that way. And then when you find problems and you try and help them, they think you're scrutinizing them and you're being a jerk, and they won't send you anything ever again. In the meantime, they'll pay experts to tell them exactly what you did. What can you do? It's bureaucracy at its best. So finding companies that believe in their product enough to let us test it our way, our style, without worrying about having to read a script or needing their approval before we can show the video to you is not something we want to entertain. But we can't do that without your support. And there goes my browser. It just crashed for the first time. I should not have said anything. Again, the browser crashing is a memory leak that's happening apparently in all Chromium-based browsers. It's been going on over a month now. I've made YouTube aware of it. And if you search for memory leak YouTube chat, it's only in the live chat that's causing the memory leak. If you shut off the live chat, the memory leak goes away. And it's always verifiable. You can reproduce it constantly. So hopefully the fix will be soon. I've made some people at YouTube aware. Whether or not they just give me lip service or they actually see it through, we'll have to wait and see. In the meantime, it's out of our hands. Nick Caffrey with a €5 super chat says, just the thanks. Well, right on. Thank you, Nick. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks to all of you, all of our members in green here, for making this channel possible and being a part of this amazing community that we have here. Thanks to Richard for letting us showcase his build today. As I mentioned, I've got to put this in the case and put the power supply in it. Maybe we'll do it tomorrow. I'm not sure. I kind of want to do it on camera, but I've gone over for today. This took a bit longer than I was anticipating because I enjoy and prioritize our conversation over the work. But regardless, everything's working flawlessly and as it should, and it's passing all the tests, and it's quiet, it's pretty, it's reliable, it's updated. So everything else is formality, right? Everything else we've got to do is easy. Power supply gets installed, motherboard gets installed, cables get hooked up and managed, panels go back on, Windows gets activated, hand it off to the customer, have a nice day. And when we get the pre-built from ASUS, as I previously mentioned, more content for us to diagnose, and we'll do that as always live and interact with you and your suggestions as we try to figure out what the heck is wrong with it. That'll wrap it up for me for today. Thanks to Mara, of course, for all the work she does in the background, our friends at Acronis and Acronis Trimmage, our friends at SCD Keys, who are back to accepting PayPal. That's all recommended and backed up by me personally. I'll have free trials, by the way, for you to decide the value on your own. And all the discounts, which are available to you guys, are in the video notes below this video, along with links to all the parts that are in today's build. What am I forgetting? Forgetting something. It is Friday, so I hope you enjoy the rest of your Friday and have a great weekend. I hope to be back to finish this on camera. I'd hate to do any of this off camera. This is good content. So hopefully you'll join us over the weekend. I'm hoping tomorrow. Tomorrow? Maybe.
If you want to come tomorrow?
As soon as I can.
As soon as you can.
Yeah.
Crash number 7. I'm stepping away because I'm angry.
Well, you could close down the live chat and it fixes the crashes.
It actually didn't. I did that twice. It did not work.
Well, we will we'll have an interesting experience when we get the other build done and see if the same thing happens.
Sure.
Because if you're crashing with the live chat closed, that may be something else.
Sure.
Okay, well, I will see you all again very, very soon. Thank you to, of course, our friend Buster in Scotland, our friend Frankie B in New York, our friend Paul Gray in Australia, and our friend Oystein in Norway, who are super members here and have been historically and consistently very generous in helping us be able to put these videos together for you. And to each and every one of our members, thank you guys so much for being a part of making these videos possible and the reason why I make them, which is this amazing community. So we can't thank you enough for being that amazing community. That's going to wrap it up for me for today. I'll see you all very, very soon. And until next time, bye for now.